Don't miss the awesome Naruto stories my sister creates. Her last channel was hacked, so to stay in the loop, please subscribe to her new channel. It would mean a lot to her, and you won't regret it. Dear Naruto Lemon fans, I'm inviting all of you to my Boosty channel. You know that YouTube doesn't exactly approve of this kind of content, so please subscribe to my paid subscription and enjoy Naruto Lemon scenes comfortably. There are different subscription tiers from Mini Lemon to God Lemon. Those who buy the over Naruto Lemon and God Naruto Lemon, I'll mentions in the videos. Dare. The wounds are almost healed and most of them don't even hurt. Therefore, until Mabui wakes up, we can see what I have achieved by killing my own kind. So, what goodies await me this time? Excluding a whole bunch of messages about raising the level of chakra, affinity with some element and increasing characteristics, a few could be noted. Quest. Cursed Island. Goal. Kill all bounty hunters, completed. Kill all pirates, completed. Reward. Plus 75,000 experience. Achievement Reaper. Skill, possession of a double-sided scythe. Reaper. The title is given for the quest. Plus 10% to performance at night. Plus 25% to characteristics during a confrontation with an enemy twice the size of you and your allies. Plus 35% to characteristics during a confrontation with an enemy 3 times larger than you and your allies. Proficiency with a double-sided scythe. Level 1. The art of the Zeratai clan, the main purpose of which is covert attack and deception maneuvers. Attention! You receive the title, Killer. The title is issued for killing more than 300 people. Plus 3% to agility. Level plus 1. Attention! You have reached level 50. Select class. Dark King. Lord of the Night. Shadow Killer. Puppeteer. Quite expected. A bunch of classes, mostly related to darkness. All had their pros and cons, but I was much more impressed by the Dark King and Shadow Dancer. The Dark King, judging by the description and bonuses given, was designed to manipulate summons. This class increased the number of contracts concluded to 3. And after reaching the 100th level, to 9. It also gave a bonus to pumping along with summons. Well, a couple of little things. Considering AKO's capabilities and taking into account the fact that there will be 3 of them, the enemies are clearly in trouble. But despite the great bonuses and the absence of restrictions, I don't want to become a summoner. I don't want to depend on others. Shadow Dancer made me happy because it increased my agility by 6%, gave me the opportunity to learn a special style, and the most delicious thing, it gave me a speed parameter. Considering my endurance, they will be stronger. They will catch up, the weaker ones are unlikely to run away. A tank with a speed class. Okay, as they say, neither fluff nor feather. K.U. Luck increased by 5%. Oh, piano. Okay, let's choose Shadow Dancer. And now, drum roll. Status. Name, Tatsuya Uzumaki. Race, human, shinobi. Class, Shadow Dancer. Affiliation, Uzumaki. Level, 50. Strength, 201. Agility, 215. Stamina, 258. Wisdom, 198. Intelligence, 205. Speed, 155. Chakra, 162. Control, 102. Luck, 26. Will, 32. Free points, 5. Achievements. Uzumaki Heir. Last of the Might. Uzumaki. Reaper. Assassin. Zerg Hunter 2. Zergling Slayer 2. Supreme Fusion. That's how we live. After Mabui woke up, we quickly got to the pier and boarded the most maneuverable-looking ship. There I sat down in the cabin for half an hour, hastily trying to learn at least something about navigation, after which, with grief in half, we were able to get off the island. Judging by the maps, in 2 or 3 days we will reach the island of Haku, which belongs to the country of the seas, and then we will move to the southeast. There is still a powerful country of heaven there. But I will go there with the traders, because it does not smile upon me to stand at the helm again. It's not my thing to sail the seas. Futo Port was the largest port in the country of seas. Residents made their living from fishing, and shinobi were guests here, albeit infrequently, but quite ordinary. The country did not have Gakurazato, so free shinobi who often came to order were welcomed here with open arms. Today was a completely normal day for the residents. All the men went fishing, while the women looked after the children or did routine work, cleaning, washing dishes, and so on. But the day was disrupted by the roar of a ship crashing into a small cluster of reefs on the southern side of the coast. The residents were surprised, because you have to be able to crash into the only reefs for a kilometer, and quite noticeable ones at that. After, let's say, an unpleasant collision, the cause of which was a clone whose arms grow from the wrong place, we finally reached dry land. After which several shinobi rushed towards us, whose intentions were in doubt. 20 meters away from us, on a hill, stood 4 Nuke-nin. Weak Chunins, Mabui will easily take them down. But the concealing seals make us almost like ordinary commoners, which is why in their eyes we are just harmless people. One of them pathetically twirled a kunai, grabbing the ring on the handle, and stared at Mabui with obvious lust in his eyes. I turn off the concealment seal for a moment, which is why the 4 quickly turned pale, realizing that they had run into problems. Abruptly hiding their weapons, the Nukanins retreat back. And yet, how did you manage to crash into the reefs when the open sea was 20 meters on both sides of their cluster? Mabui looked at me, clearly surprised by the crookedness of my clone. I didn't know how the clones were at the helm. So you sent a clone, while you yourself were resting at that time? The white-haired girl sighed heavily. Well, I was meditating. Of course. So there was a clone snoring in your cabin. Okay. I was sleeping, I admitted honestly. She saw everything anyway, which means that she guessed what I was saying even before that. So it's still your fault that we lost the ship, she said with reproach in her dark green eyes. The gaze smoothly moved to the graceful faces, and then to the body. Be that as it may, she is a beauty. Come on. We would have continued our journey across the other end of the island anyway. At these words, Mabui just shrugged her shoulders. By the way, it is worth noting the fact that there were a lot of people here. Mostly fishermen who looked in surprise first at us and then at the ship. Some of them were already heading to the crash site in the hope of profiting from something. There's still nothing valuable on the ship, and even if there was, I still wouldn't stop them. Okay, let's get to the port town itself, and then, after a day of rest, we'll head to the northeast of the island. Haku Island is huge in size and has a fairly humid climate. It is somewhat reminiscent of Madagascar, but many times larger. The port city of Futo was quite large, of course, not a city in the country of fire or tea, but still impressive. Stopping at the first inn we came across, we went about our business. Namely, Mabui went to investigate the situation, but I sat in the room, turning on the sense of darkness. By the way, it was level 44, and the radius increased to 2 kilometers. So, this city is not as simple as I expected. In the next room there were 2 chunin, in the bar on the first floor there were 5 chunin and 1 tokubetsu jonin. Within a radius of 2 kilometers there are 33 chunin and 4 jounin. This is not Imuri, where everyone turned out to be thugs and other trash. Although, never mind. I don't want to get into any pile of manure again. I need to get used to the current class. It's shadow dancer, but I can't dance. I managed to assess the influence of speed on my capabilities, but the distinctive feature of my class is its special style. The style implied dances, performing which you could fight. It seems there was only one Chan in the canon with this style. About my new style. The fact is that you first need to master the first dance called Shadow Threads, after which a new type will open. I knew how to dance, but my body. I have the grace of a bear, so it won't be easy to master the dance. 5 hours later, Mabui also returned, just before I finished my ridiculous jerking, trying to master the dance. I already regret choosing this class. Of course, style is not given in such a short time, but the mastery itself. This shame is better spent in the dungeons, otherwise someone will see, and my reputation as a serious guy will be over. Well? I turned to her, rinsing my face with cold water. Apparently, Tatsuya-sama, we will have to stay late. Minus, are there any problems? I said with a sigh. Mabui sat down by the bed, turning off the camouflage seal. No. The point is whether you want to face these problems. Minus, with what exactly? You must have noticed that there are an extremely large number of shinobi here. I found out about this from the Nukanins. I guess they were happy to share the information with you. I grinned, roughly imagining how she got the information. Exactly. The fact is that in this city, Koketsuno Haoto woke up earlier than usual. He wasn't the type to lie on the bed, but he certainly wasn't a hard worker either. He generally despised any kind of work. Perhaps the reason for this was his father, who used to be a small feudal lord and could afford a lot. Typically, the children of such people grew up to be spoiled representatives of the golden youth. But Haoto was not ordinary. Since childhood, he was smarter and more cunning than his peers. Although not masterful, he learned to manipulate his environment. Perhaps this is what helped him stay afloat and start spinning when his father's business failed and his father's severed head rolled on the floor. It was 6 a.m. and the sun was just beginning to rise. The day after tomorrow a very important event will take place, which happens only once a month. Underground fights where you can earn money. In fact, he ended up on this island by accident. Escaping from the island of Ozu, he boarded the first ship that he came across, and only at sea did he find out where this ship was heading. Arriving in the land of the seas, he was not at a loss and began to move around, engaging in trade and making new acquaintances. Later he caught the eye of a local authority, Kayan, who became interested in the promising young man. And now he had 3 grocery stores and 1 weapon store in his hands. Of course, he was just in charge of it all. But the very fact of such rapid growth was surprising. Over time, Kayan began to take his newly made protégé to all sorts of events for a small circle. This is how Haoto learned about the huge business of underground battles, held once a month. It was there that he saw an opportunity to climb even higher on the career ladder. He had no intention of trying to earn money from the betting. There were very serious people there who completely suppressed any competition, but no one forbade betting. On the contrary, it was precisely on this theme that the business rested. Perhaps I'll be lucky today. It was with these thoughts that Haoto poured expensive coffee into a cup and, pouring hot water, began to drink it slowly. He was not a gambling person, and when he spoke of luck, he did not mean at all that he would be lucky with his bet. In truth, for the last 3 months he had been looking for a person for his venture. For the last 6 months in a row, underground fights have had only one champion. More precisely, a champion. Every time she came to the fights, defeated everyone, took the money and left. The majority did not really like this, but they could not do anything against her, because she was a protégé of one of the owners of this city. A man who is even above him, Haoto, the boss. It may be worth clarifying the most important rule of underground fighting. No one superfluous. Any nuke or bounty hunter could not come into the arena and fight. The inner circle was not prohibited from bringing friends, so the only way to enter the arena was to enter on behalf of someone. That is why, no matter how much these local authorities expressed dissatisfaction, there should have been no complaints against others. And if someone else took the money, it only meant that the person you brought turned out to be a weakling. Haruto winced. How much money has he already lost because of this Titania? Yes, Titania, as she came to be called, was the sole champion. She suppressed anyone who opposed her. Finishing matches with lightning speed, she made the money bags howl with tears of blood. Of course, they could bet on her, but only she benefited from it. Everyone understood this, and every time they tried to put a strong nuke or a bounty hunter against her, but you know the result. Haruto understood this too. But he saw the amount of money turnover on the betting and understood that this was a critical case, and if he was lucky, he would hit the jackpot. But during these 3 months he did not find a single applicant. It's not that they don't exist. The country of the seas was located at the maximum distance from the 5 great powers, so the city was simply swarming with nukenins, and, accordingly, headhunters. He could choose anyone, because they are all greedy for money. The problem was that he saw the level of those who entered the arena, and after 3 months he began to lose hope. Why does everything have to be so difficult? I understand that this is life, and there is no place for easy gain. And if there is, then the likelihood of such a miracle is terribly small. But take it. How sometimes you wish that luck would just fall into your hands. Being in deep thoughts, Haruto almost had a stroke when he heard a voice from behind. Good coffee, Kokutsuno-san. It was unusually quiet in the forest near Futo. It seemed as if the world had decided to take a break from the bustle and give peace to at least this place. But in reality everything was not like that. Through tons of green leaves and plants, it's a stretch, but one could notice a slight curvature of space. However, the user clearly took this detail into account, because after a moment even a small part of the curvature was smoothed out, and he was lost from sight. I energized the barrier of illusory flickering with chakra, a complex, but at the same time useful barrier, the basis of which is the element, no matter how strange it may sound. Water. The energy is transferred directly to the middle of the structure, where the neutral chakra receives an elemental color, acquiring the element of water, after which the water from the chakra creates a flicker that gradually bends the rays of light. All this simply required a breakthrough of chakra, and another disadvantage was that it was not an obstacle to a more or less developed sensor. But the problem with chakra was solved by my huge reserve, and the sensors would not give me any problems. Yes, and I did it in haste. So, gentlemen, I looked at the 3 nukenins lying on the ground. You have a minute to reveal everything you know about the underground arena. I cancelled the paralysis effect on the head of one nuke, after which he glared at me with a furious look. I would just like to unfreeze my mouth, but control. Shouldn't you go through the forest, he growled. Well, why so rude? I ask again, what do you know about the underground arena? We know a lot, the nuke grinned, trying to shake off his paralysis. Wow, I caught it. You'll tell me out of the kindness of your heart, right? I said, unfreezing the heads of the other 2. One of them immediately spat at me, with a senbon, which I easily dodged. One yelled, trying in vain to get up. As you wish, I put my hand to the head of a particularly frisky one, who spat senbon at me. A seal instantly flashes on his forehead, glowing red. Nuke squealed, twitching with all his might. Oh, he was able to lean on his elbow despite the paralysis. A moment later, the seal flares up with renewed vigor, causing the man's screams to only intensify. Seal of bloody dreams. The seal is only for torture, because it takes a lot of time to apply. But here's the plus, the victim receives phantom pain, and this does not affect his body in any way. Thanks to this, you can torture the victim for a long time and without fear that he will die from a large number of bodily wounds. Well? Don't talk. The boss of us, the first one, didn't have time to finish, as he froze with his mouth open. I don't know what your boss will do to you, guys, but you're unlikely to get to him. In short, I'm tired of all this. I pump a huge amount of chakra into the seal of bloody dreams, after which the man squeals like a pig. A few seconds later, he loses consciousness from the shock of pain and freezes, foaming at the mouth. Looking at the three exhausted Nukanins lying on the ground with wide-open eyes, in which even someone who doesn't delve into them can see pain, I thought about one dilemma: to be or not to be? I can erase their memory, but it will take a long time. I can kill. This has many advantages, if only because I can kill them with absorption. But you are becoming a ruthless monster, Tatsuya. Is it worth killing them simply because they ran into the wrong thing and were in the wrong place at the wrong time? But killing will benefit myself. Absolutely illogical humanity, because should a person who carried out a massacre on a small island worry about such things? The answer is obvious: no. After all, the reasons to kill them outweigh the opposite. The lives of 3 people are absolutely nothing compared to the lives of hundreds of thousands of bounty hunters. But, even if it's illogical, perhaps I would at least like to start with this. Sighing, Tatsuya twirled the kunai on his index finger, after which it disappeared with a pop. Looking at the 3 lying Nukanin, he just muttered something about girls and their influence, after which he sat down next to one, placing his palm on his forehead. The Fuin elm instantly spread across the face, after which, with an influx of chakra, it glowed blue. The young man sat like that for about 10 minutes, after which he moved on to the next one. Having thrown the Nukanin out into the forest in front of the path, he hurried to the city. Titania, that means. Over the course of several days, a new figure became active in the city and gradually increased his influence. Tatsuya concluded several contracts under which he supplied some seals that were inaccessible or rare for these places. After which he established a connection and reached out to a larger person. The first deal took place in the alley with one of the members of the local gang, who was happy to please his boss with a rare deal. The next target was the boss himself, and then the one who protected the leader. The bandit himself would not have survived. The competition is very strong, and the roof just needed a person for small matters. Although he himself was involved in small matters and, in fact, was a beginner. The final target for which the Fuin party was intended was the head of the local law enforcement department, who also had some influence in the underground world. 3 days later, I was able to reach that person who was part of a narrow circle of people who had access to the underground arena. Koketsuno Haoto was an ordinary businessman who ran several shops at once. But this is only at first glance. But in fact, he is a very promising person with a head on his shoulders. Otherwise, how can you reach such a level in 4 years, starting from the very bottom? As I found out, underground fighting will begin in 2 days, so we need to hurry. I would like to get to Kayen himself, this guy's boss, and also the leader of a very influential company. But, I'm afraid it will take quite a lot of time, and I don't like sitting out my pants for a whole month. We managed to find out that battles take place once a month, and at this time all sorts of money bags from all over the country of the sea flock to the town. Now I was sitting in the living room of Haoto, who turned out to be a completely normal guy and even offered me coffee. I politely refused, fully understanding that I was unlikely to get up after a cup. So, then, you, Tatsuya-san, want to offer yourself to be a participant in underground battles. It is, of course, interesting that you were able to obtain so much information, but you also had to know that you were not destined to reach the first place. Minus Titania. I heard about her, they say she is very strong. Not strong, Tatsuya-san. She is simply invincible. And, as you can understand, she is an Uzumaki, so she won't be able to starve her out. Well, I think I can surprise her. Surprise me first. So you didn't notice, I leaned back on the sofa. What didn't you notice? Your guards were kind enough to let me come see you. Killed? He inquired. As if I didn't notice that he almost imperceptibly gave a signal to another one who was hiding. No, what are you talking about? Paralysis is a good thing. So you are a master of poisons. No, let me use a couple. The thing is that your subject didn't hear our conversation from the very beginning. Haruto frowned at these words, after which it finally dawned on him. So that's who sold the seals. So you can use Fuin too. I think you can occupy her for 5 minutes. Even if this is unofficial, even forbidden information, she is an Uzumaki and knows Fuinjutsu at a high level. Therefore, even the surprise factor of seals will not last long. But so be it, I'll choose you this time. You understand that you won't be allowed to see Titania right away, right? Of course. And how many will have to lose before I can fight her? Many. Each tournament involves a minimum of 30 people. And don't be so sure, the opponents are also strong. And now, perhaps, let's move directly to who will receive what. The underground arena was located near the forest and was hidden by small rocks. Only certain authorities in the country of the seas knew the entrance, but even there were quite a few of them, since such battles were officially prohibited. Most came just to watch, but some made big money thanks to the betting. Therefore, the authorities turned a blind eye to the monthly gatherings of moneybags in one inconspicuous port. My employer also made money from bets, whose entire business so far was based on the money he won. If I can defeat Titania today, it's funny to call her that if I know who else has received the same nickname. My opponents were, every single one of them Nuke Nin. 4 people could show their Jonin level, while in total there were 39 of them. Not counting me. What a lucky coincidence that there are exactly 40 of us. As Haruto explained to me, out of 40 there will be 20, out of 20 10, and out of 10 5. 5 will go out to fight all against all, until only 1 remains. The winner will go up against Titania. It was pointless to force her to participate in these battles, since she was 100% likely to win. The second place was considered the main place. Although there were some who believed that Titania would lose, there were fewer and fewer such fools every time. For now, fools. I don't even know how much money Haruto will get thanks to me. The arena itself was a fairly spacious building, somewhat reminiscent of a place for additional battles in the tower in the Forest of Death. There were no stands, instead there were balconies, from which, under the protection of seals, hundreds of moneybags looked at us. Gladiators, with different numbers came out one by one and then fought. Opponents were determined at random. I had number 40 since I was the last one to register. My opponent was the 12th number, quite a strong Chunin, who had already participated in battles in this arena before, judging by the information provided by the employer. We were coming out 4th, and out of 4 Jounin, only 1 was coming out in front of me. The battles were supposed to take place over 2 days due to the limitations of the arena and the waste of chakra to restore the landscape after each battle. The fights went surprisingly quickly, and the Jounin fight was especially interesting. He was a master of Bukijutsu, or throwing weapons, and could imbue weapons with lightning chakra. It was an epic fight between a strong Chunin and a Jonin, where, as expected, the Jonin won. I'll have to remember his style. The rest weren't particularly spectacular, except that another Chunin issued earthen pikes, spoiling everyone's nerves with this action, and especially the staff who had to fix everything. And now it's my turn. I will only use seals and barriers up to B rank, so as not to burn out ahead of time. Naturally, I won't fire Yamaton. My opponent, a middle-aged man with red hair, and I stood 3 meters away from each other, after which we silently raised our right hand, folding our fingers in a seal of concentration. Let's start. came the voice of a masked guy who was on one of the balconies. The Chunin immediately tried to break the distance, which proves that he fights at medium to long distances. I immediately sprint after him, unsealing 2 kunai. Oblique deformation is not worth shining a light on yet. The Chunin quickly makes his seals, after which a ball of water flies towards me. It looks like a safe ball, but that's just what it looks like. If it crashes, the water can seriously damage the internal organs. With a jerk to the side I dodge the water ball, after which I force the Chunin into close combat, actively waving 2 kunai. Suddenly, with a sharp swing of a kunai hidden in his sleeve, he knocks out one of my weapons, after which he tries to reach me with a slashing blow. I grab my hand, and the Chunin falls helplessly to the ground. "He's paralyzed," I said to the spectator, who nodded when he saw the small needles in my arm. I just printed it to hide the fact that I can leave stamps with a touch. Minus number 41. He announced, checking the Chunin, after which a couple of stingy compliments were heard. Well, yes, this is not a gladiatorial arena with thousands of spectators chanting the name of the winner. The second battle ended the same way as the previous one. The young Chunin tried to catch me and hit me with cat R's, but alas, he also had to be paralyzed. The next fight was against one of the Jonins. The weakest of the 4 others, but at the same time very dexterous. What little reserve he had, like a Chunin, he made up for with excellent control and speed. Judging by the katana and wakizashi on the belt, the main style is kenjutsu. The spectator announces the beginning, after which we instantly get closer. I quickly unseal the double braid and, using the smoke from the unsealing, strike the first blow. The Jonin naturally dodges and tries to stab me with his katana. He knocked off the other side of the blade with the wakizashi, and then attacked me with double pressure. He had the element of fire, which he imbued his weapons with. The strange fighting style made it very difficult to use the warp scythe, but I held on. It's not for nothing that I acquired the skill. Suddenly, stopping for a moment, the Jounin formed the seals at a barely perceptible speed, and then slammed the ground. The badger that appeared with a sword in his hand was a complete surprise, but I managed to dodge. In vain he left AKO with Mabui. Otherwise, fighting against these two and not using Yamaton or strong seals is difficult. The badger was very fast and worked well as a team with his summoner, quickly changing attack angles and putting me under the Jonin's katana. I even admired the way they worked as a team. The badger dodged the blade of the warp scythe and tried to strike back, but he clearly didn't expect me to throw Senbon at him from my mouth. The strong sleeping pill acted quickly, and 10 seconds later, when I dodged the Jounin's furious counterattack, the badger finally fell asleep. Phew, lucky. Now a Jonin. He began to fight more aggressively, pressing the attack more and more. It hurts. The katana cut on the shoulder, after which I slashed back with my scythe. The Jonin did not have time to block the blow and received an impressive wound on his chest. Having caught his slowdown, I instantly find myself behind him, after which I damage my calves with a cutting blow. The Jonin falls to his knees, after which I am awarded the victory, and the clapping from the audience becomes louder. Haoto grins at a couple of bearded men who sigh and mutter something. There are only 2 fights left, and we can finally see who she is, this Titania. The next fight was between the top 5. Only 2 can win, and the rest can only accept defeat. Of the 4 Jonin, 3 passed, all except my opponent, and a Tokubetsu Jonin who had an abnormally developed reaction also passed. He, like Madara with his Sharingan turned on, calmly predicted his opponent's moves and defeated them with ease. When one Chunin was making the seals, he had already jumped up, and as if in mockery, several hidden blades passed right under him. And even I didn't notice them. And the Jonins were surprised. In short, a very strong guy who could give us problems. The arena, which seemed so large, became cramped due to our presence. When the spectator announced the start of the battle, no one even moved, carefully examining the others. I also noticed 2 other jonin. One specialized in genjutsu and was, as I believed, slightly weaker than Kurinai. And this is impressive, considering that this is a nuke nin. The next jounin was a parody of Kakashi. Not in the sense that he has a Sharingan and wears a mask. He simply had a fairly large number of techniques in his arsenal, and his chakra reserve, judging by the darkness, was simply off the charts. Just a little short of reaching me. He showed us the release of earth, fire, and lightning. There is a possibility that he left one more element in reserve. Taijutsu, average. I wish I could absorb it. Start already. Someone shouted from the stands, losing patience. As if at this signal we all took off. More precisely, not everyone, the Genjutsu master and the Tokubetsu jonin apparently decided to wait until the others weakened and then finish them off. But both noticed that they were not the only smart ones here, and they rushed at each other. Meanwhile, I successfully dodged the kick of the under Kakashi, who did not hesitate to send a fireball after me. The Bukijutsu master jumped high and then pulled out 2 scrolls from behind his back. With a pop, a pile of iron, saturated with lightning, came towards us. The throwing weapon, infused with Wraithon, calmly pierced the earthen wall of the jonin who attacked me. But he was still able to get out of the attack range, and in the meantime I remembered that Tenten carried out exactly the same bombardment. Even without the Raiden, it's still the same style. Katan, fire whirlwind, I heard under Kakashi's ninjutsu. The next moment I am being consumed alive by flames. I sharply open my eyes, after which I instantly jump to the side. Kato, fire whirlwind, the jonin said, after which a fiercely blazing fire passes through the place where I stood a moment earlier at breakneck speed. Phew, almost died. Minus explosion. Says the Bukijutsu master, rushing away at maximum speed. I slammed the ground, creating a small but very strong barrier. The cry of the ninjutsu master made it clear that the explosion that shook the entire arena was not in vain. I turn off the barrier, which I managed to hide under a layer of dust, and, having materialized a scythe, I jerk forward to the sub-Kakashi. The dust hasn't settled yet, which means I can easily use my ability. Absorption, I whispered, and the unconscious jonin quickly withered away. I place Kibakufida on his body and jump to the side. The explosion announced the not entirely ethical death of the jonin, and I only reactivated the barrier, hiding behind it. You are becoming a ruthless monster, Tatsuya. Mamoru Hideki carefully watched the dust curtain, ready to repeat the volley of throwing iron again. He had seen a lot in his life and was ready for absolutely anything. He always carried an arsenal of weapons and explosive seals, and always dominated fights at medium and long range. He was shocked when he heard another explosion after his trap. Could one of the seals explode too late? No, he definitely remembered that he drew the same kanji with the meaning 1. The seals were supposed to explode a second after the voice command. Of course, due to such a rapid activation, part of the power of the explosion was not realized. Well, that's not what we're talking about. How did another explosion happen a few seconds later? He probably didn't supply enough chakra. When the dust settled, all but 2 struggling cunning people could see the jonin being torn to pieces, while I barely survived under the barrier. Everyone looked in surprise at the barrier shimmering blue, and then at me, hiding under it. Next came the dead jonin, who had been torn to pieces. The Bukijutsu master looked in shock at the result of his actions, but quickly came to his senses. Now he was preparing to attack me, as evidenced by several battle scythes in his hand. Deaths in the arena are undesirable, but it will not be possible to deny that they will happen. Nukenin are not gladiators, they can only kill. Therefore, the fact that only one died during the tournament is quite a good indicator. Meanwhile, the fight between the Genjutsu master and the Tokubetsu jonin was coming to an end. The jonin confidently pushed back the weaker Nukenin, replacing real attacks with illusions, and himself striking from an unexpected direction. But, thanks to the quick reaction of the enemy, he also did not remain offended, wounding the Jonin in the chest and shoulder. He also wanted to use some technique, but did not have time due to the genjutsu. In a word, I need to pump up the resistance to illusions, otherwise I'll die from such jounins. It's good that I didn't meet the Uchiha. Otherwise I would have died under genjutsu. My opponent tried to reach me with his scythes, and sometimes threw small amounts of iron at me. Suddenly he took a strange pose, grabbing as many kunai as possible. Minus futon, aerial dance. I was almost killed by a huge number of kunai that flew at incredible speed. I close myself again with the barrier, after which the continuous volley stops. I turn off the barrier as quickly as possible, and then jump to the side, again summoning the deformation scythe. Hitting off more kunai, I circle around the Jonin, waiting for the perfect moment to attack. Minus futon, spinning waltz. The Jounin turned sharply, so quickly that his silhouette became difficult to distinguish, and then began to send kunai in all directions. I turn on the barrier again, hiding from the throwing iron. It seems like a simple enemy, but in reality it's very difficult to reach. Every second can become the moment of your death, because he has a bottomless scroll of any throwing crap. And the latest techniques. I've already seen this somewhere. I turn off the barrier, after which I barely dodge a volley of Senbon. I send back several kunai with explosive seals. Shizuka. These were the techniques of Shizuka, who ruled Nadeshiko no Sato in canon. But how does this guy know all these techniques? That's Tenten style, and now he's stealing it from the islanders in the other sea. The Jonin approaches, and the genjutsu master only watches, regaining his breath. I need to finish faster, otherwise I risk losing. I counter the swing of the double scythes with my double-sided one, after which I sharply turn the shaft, making a strike with the second blade. The Jonin manages to dodge, but the next second a Senbon flies out of my mouth. He barely fights off the small but dangerous needle. I take advantage of this moment to strike. The sharp blade of the scythe leaves a deep diagonal wound on the Jounin's chest, after which he tries to inflict damage on me. But the double-sided scythe blade is not made for beauty, and therefore the Jonin receives, in addition, an impressive wound on his wrist. Exhaling, he breaks the distance, after which he loudly says, "I give up." The next second I feel a kunai entering my back. Having woken up from the vision, I dodged the sneaky blow of the genjutsu master. He tried to break the distance by pulling out a tanto. As it turned out, he is a rather weak opponent in close combat, and I quickly defeated him. Well done. Haoto shouts. Wait. Genjutsu. I couldn't dodge the cutting blow of the kunai, and a cut appeared on my shoulder, centimeters from my neck. With a swing of my scythe I deflect the next blow and counterattack with kunai from seals. Minus number 41. The spectator announced. I looked at the wounded illusionist. It must be admitted that he was the most problematic opponent. Each of my victories turned out to be false, and I barely avoided dangerous blows. I'll have to have something against genjutsu. The seals in my head will protect me from light genjutsu, but it's not worth going against an Uchiha with a Sharingan aimed at genjutsu, like Shursui. I'll have to rummage through the library. When I went up to the balconies, I was met by Haoto, very pleased with the money he had won. Fight with Titania in 2 hours. In the meantime, Ironine will examine you. So fast? I thought the fighting would continue for several days. That's how it was originally intended. But this time there were many strong shinobi involved, and the battles took place very quickly. Only 4 hours passed and we reached Titania. That's why they called her now. Why didn't she come here? I don't know. You wouldn't call her arrogant, but she always does it. I see. They quickly patched me up, fortunately the wounds were shallow, thanks to my regeneration. And after an hour and a half I was ready for battle. Having gone down to the arena, I calmly waited for my rival to come, but in reality, a fellow clan member. I hope, and I'm almost sure, that she's not alone here. This means there is still a chance for the Uzumaki clan. Half an hour later she appeared. Long red hair that reached her waist, wide brown eyes. The figure attracted the eye with its curves, and the roundness pleased the eye where it was needed. She was wearing leather pants and a black turtleneck. On his hand are strange plate gloves, unusual for a ninja. Short boots on feet. Quite modest, to say the least. But the clothes couldn't hide her beauty, which simply made people freeze for a few minutes. Against the background of such, Shrekswalnosti, serious eyes stood out, looking at me as if I were a pig being led to slaughter. Shall we start? I say, noting her resemblance to Elsa Scarlet. Just an incredible resemblance. The girl nods, and, having waited for the cry to start the battle, we begin the battle. In theory, we were supposed to fight the Genjutsu master in the next battle. But for some reason they decided that if only one of the 5 came out, then that would also be normal. And now I fought desperately against Titania. The sudden approach did not give me any advantages, because the red-haired woman wielded double blades at a high level. I barely dodged the horizontal blow, after which I barely fight off the stabbing attacks. Titania actively used sealing seals. In the blink of an eye, her swords were replaced by a spear, with which she tried to pierce me. I break the distance, and already a lot of shuriken are coming after me. Titania quickly overtakes me and, reflecting a swing of my scythe, attacks with a two-handed sword, which appeared in her hand in a second. The slash almost makes me into 2 halves, but this was avoided thanks to the second blade of the scythe. The weight of the metal presses unpleasantly on your hands. It is worth noting that this Uzumaki's weapon appeared without a bang, and I did not expect that my side would be cut by a tanto. Gritting my teeth, I endure the pain, and then I swing my scythe. Titania jumps back, giving me a volley of senbon. I also close the distance, after which I throw a kunai with a seal attached to the handle. This is not Kibakufyuda. The red-haired girl apparently suspected something, because she rushed to the other side of the arena at the highest possible speed. Well, she's an Uzumaki, it's quite understandable that she recognized the seal. Yes, anyone would have guessed that something was wrong, because I only threw 1 kunai. We will have to take this into account in the future. The fuin on the handle of the kunai flashes, and the next second a large barrier appears in that place. This is a sealed barrier of 4 sides. Ideal for traps, even though it consumes a considerable share of chakra for creation and sealing. The girl looked at the barrier in surprise, and then turned her gaze to me. The question was clear in the eyes. But the next moment she frowned. We are closing the distance again. Titania unseals a couple of sais, short, but quite convenient blades with a triple blade. Only piercing damage is significant. The cutting blow of the scythe goes into the milk, and I have to defend myself from sharp attacks. A moment later, I crouch, dodging a swing of a metal pole, which the girl immediately changed to a long katana, trying to wound me as I stood up. I immediately block the blow with the shaft of my scythe, after which I spit out the poison senbon. Titania dodged, but flinched slightly, apparently surprised by my trick. She deflected the scythe blade, but did not have time to counterattack, as she had to dodge the second blade. That's why I love this braid. Titania blocks the next blow with her katana and crouches slightly. I was about to take advantage of her shaky stance, but the pain in my side only forced me to retreat. I press my palm to the ground, and a barrier flares up above me, which in the next moment is hit by the red-haired woman. Blood flowed from a wound in my side, and the ever-increasing pain made it difficult to concentrate on the battle. A wave of cold energy passed through my body, sobering my mind and slightly dulling the pain. Titania, meanwhile, presses her palm against the barrier, after which it disappears. Ova Uzumaki. That's why fighting against your own people is unpleasant and problematic. Once again we meet in close combat, and if I am due to my reluctance to demonstrate Yamaton, then Titania is probably because she completely went into close combat. She confirmed this by picking up a pair of nunchucks, which, even in quantities of one, are rather unpleasant things. On the verge of losing from a powerful blow, I parry the attacks, and then jump away sharply. An explosion is heard at the place where we were standing. Titania was only slightly worse for wear and now wanted to close the distance. I successfully ran away from her, simultaneously thinking about how to force her to recognize my dominance after she understood who I was. The fact that I am the heir of the clan is unlikely to stop her. Which means, only strength will help. Stopping abruptly, I quickly swing my scythe, aiming for her stomach. She successfully repels, after which she replaces the nunchucks with a naginata. I dodge the long blade, make a sweep, but she jumps. This is exactly what was needed. The scythe, with a disgusting sound, cuts her skin in the thigh area, leaving a shallow cut. The girl clenches her teeth, trying not to scream, and then tries to strike back. Suddenly, right during the swing, the naginata changes into a huge mace. I, who had already prepared to block the blow, did not have time to move the scythe to the side and dodge, and the rollback from such a heavy weapon felt unpleasant pain in my hands. The mace is replaced by a whip, with which she hits a stone millimeters from me. I barely made it. Well, that's it, it can't go on like this. I'm selling at this rate. I quickly close the distance, and then swing my scythe, which glows black. The scythe calmly cuts the whip, and I am already directing the blow of the second blade. Titania only has time to twitch slightly before the blade stops millimeters from her neck. Admit defeat, the girl shuddered, then looked at me with a strange look. Okay, she sighs. The first time I heard her voice, I was surprised. He was pleasant and also, subtle. Which did not fit with the image of an adult Chan, who is the champion of the arena. I thought it was just that she looked young in appearance, but in fact she was over 25. It turned out that it's not so simple. I admit defeat, she says calmly, but at the same time loudly. I move the blade to the side, and then completely seal the scythe. Titania looks closely at my side. It's okay, it'll heal quickly, I told her, causing her to shudder. Number 41. They announced from above, causing the moneybags to roar. Most with despair, and only a small part with joy. Very few people took the risk of betting on me, and now they got huge money, because the probability of my winning was only 10%. I go up to the balconies, meeting Haoto. He smiled joyfully, talking with several rich people. Haoto received a simply huge amount, since he made a ladder bet. And after my victory over Titania, I probably became one of the richest people in the country of the sea. Okay, I helped him, he helped me, so we will separate like ships at sea. Kidding. Connections are always useful, so I approach Haoto, smoothly plunging into the conversation. Miyuki Uzumaki looked warily at the scythe blade that was almost ready to pierce her neck. Realizing that she was not in danger, she turned her gaze to the owner of such a strange weapon. A tall guy, a head taller than her, with black hair and brown eyes, the same as hers. A black t-shirt and matching black pants gave the guy a gloomy image that was only spoiled by his face. No, he was handsome, even too handsome, but the angularity inherent in teenagers, and even childhood ones, made it clear that he was younger than her. She turned 20 this year, which means the guy was even younger, somewhere in the region of 15 or 16. She shuddered at his hoarse but pleasant voice, which asked her to give up. She decided to obey him as the blade of the scythe pressed against her neck. The gaze smoothly moved to the guy's wounded side, where, in addition to the wound, there was also a large part of the hanging fabric of the t-shirt, revealing a view of the torso. A fuon suddenly appeared on the guy's pumped-up belly for a moment, causing the girl's gaze to literally become glued to his torso. A strange seal on the stomach, judging by the fact that the ligature shown was only a part, the work of a real master. And someone whom even she would recognize as a master could only be found in Uzushio. Considering the fact that she felt that the guy's reserve had only dropped by a quarter, and this despite the intense battle, and also considering that there are seals that recolor hair, which Uzumaki preferred not to apply, since they were proud of their hair color, then the conclusion was obvious. Walking around Futo, I watched as our friend secretly followed me. I must admit, really secretive, since I only discovered it with a sense of darkness. I sharply turned the corner, preparing to talk. I touched the ground, creating a barrier of soundproofing and curvature. Titania realized she had been discovered, so she appeared behind me. Deciding not to stand on ceremony, she immediately asked a question. "Who are you?" "That is?" I grin. "You're an Uzumaki, right?" "Oh, why such a statement?" "You're seals." "So, everyone who knows Fuinjutsu is an Uzumaki?" "It's funny." "No, that's not what I'm talking about." "Your seal is on your stomach, how did she know?" "I didn't turn it on. And in disabled mode it is not visible." "So what?" "Only a master of seals can make such a seal. A master by Uzumaki standards." "So, this is my problem." "Yes. And I ask you to join me. Together we can provide for those who remain and lead the clan to rebirth." "Sorry, but no," I said, turning off the seal that changes hair color. A second later, my hair turned its usual red color, finally confirming that I was an Uzumaki. "Why? Do you really care about the clan?" she said with cold notes. "No. The point is that you are not the only ones who survived the attack. I have to gather everyone. That's it." "What's your name? Didn't you recognize the heir to the clan?" I grinned, looking into her widening eyes. "Minus Tatsuya?" "Yes. Minus I'm Miyuki. Your cousin, remember?" A picture of a girl dressed in a blue kimono, smiling while helping people, pops into my head. "Of course. So you're leaving. Show me how many of you are here. And then together we will decide what we will do next. Let's go." "Grandma," Miyuki enters a two-story house where there were 13 people besides her. Not much, considering how huge the clan was. I hope there are at least 50 Uzumakis to be found throughout the world. "Miyuki, daughter, when did you come back?" An old woman with graying scarlet hair that was gathered in a ponytail came out into the hallway. "Grandma, look who I brought," she points her finger at me, and I just take off my shoes and go inside. The old woman's eyes looked with disbelief at first, and then shock appeared in them. "Tatsuya? It's you?" Grandma Sengo." "Minus Tatsuya." She suddenly exclaimed with tears in her eyes, hugging me. Uzumaki Sengo lived not far from our house, and I often visited her. She treated the past me as an ordinary boy, and not as the heir to the clan and a genius. "I thought you were dead." I just stroked the old woman on the back, feeling how it becomes easier. "I will never leave you, Grandma. I will restore the clan." "If only you were alive," she interrupts my words. I just smile. All the residents of the house gathered in the hallway, looking at me. I didn't know anyone except Miyuki and Grandma, but they all knew who I was. Well, considering that our clan numbered more than 2,000 people, it's not surprising that I don't know them. "Okay, Grandma, we're off. We need to discuss something." "Tatsuya, aren't you hungry? I'll make your favorite rice balls." "Thank you, Grandma." Miyuki and I headed to the second floor. Along the way, I met all my clanmates who were glad to see the heir alive. One particularly impressionable person even kissed me on the cheeks. The friendliness and openness of Uzumaki is simply something. "So you plan to help the fog in the war?" I don't know, Miyuki. Yagura's blood mist contributed to the destruction of Uzushio, and overthrowing him, as well as reducing the number of Kirigakure shinobi, is a priority goal. The rebels have a more peaceful leader, Terumi Mei, but how will she react to the Uzumaki clan? Or maybe you will gather all the Uzumaki and send them all here. It's quite safe here. It's safe for you. But not for others. Moreover, we will have to live under the control of the country of the sea. Which, as you know, doesn't have a good reputation. We need a place that will be completely ours. Maybe we should capture Jiro? No. This place may be full of bandits, but the land of tea and the land of seas are targeting her. We do not yet have the strength to confront countries. By the way, when will your friend arrive? Miyuki looked carefully into my eyes. Does he really think that I was messing with Mabui? He'll be here soon. Now let's get back to the main question. Minus, do you have any options? Minus an island that will be subject only to us. Inconspicuous. Where can you easily gain power? In a village where power decides everything. And the village where you can become a ruler is not Ashiko no Sato. If that brown-haired girl hasn't already been grabbed by Jiraiya, I might as well take over this place. In the meantime, it's worth gaining strength and conquering the second dungeon. Minus Miyuki, I have a plan. Leaving more than half of the money with my clanmates, I finally sailed from Haku Island. To do this, we had to travel across the entire island to the opposite, northeastern coast. There we settled down in a tavern in the port town of Hyoku, and then sailed away with the first passing merchant ship. The journey, fortunately, passed without complications, and 2 weeks later we stopped at the possession of the land of water, the island of Yumiko. A medium-sized island, not a country of the seas, of course, but it will do. There was only one city on the island, with the same name as the island. The traders who arrived with us stayed here for about half a day and sailed away, and we decided to settle here for a while. We quickly found an inn, and then Mabui without a word went to investigate. Ako was still hanging from the ceiling, looking at me with her blue eyes. I'm starting to get used to this kind of life. Okay, I'll stay here until I pass the easy level of the second inhabited dungeon, or the third in general, and then I'll leave. Tatsuya-sama, how long will you stay there? Mabui asked me. I told her that I would train with my call, just like in the past. But the girl was not tempted to remain alone. I don't know, Mabui. It all depends on the decision of the elders, I lied. The white-haired girl narrowed her eyes, then chuckled barely audibly. What should I do at this time? Like what? Train and search for information as usual. By the way, maybe you can also sign a contract with animals? Mabui thought for a moment, then shook her head. She justified her choice by the fact that she had something to improve, but I did not insist. Having opened the dungeon, I jump into it, taking Ako with me. A flash of light, and we find ourselves in a completely different place. Completely dark space overhead. Strange. So, some kind of gray desert. Rare figs that look like trees. And in general, a dull landscape, in no way reminiscent of Ayr with its lush jungle. Ako sniffed, then pointed her wing in one direction. Squinting a little, I notice a small group of black creatures that made me remember one anime. I didn't expect to meet empty ones, I whispered, looking at creatures of all stripes who had in common a white mask reminiscent of bone. The huge silhouette behind the creatures, which was already collecting a clot of some dark red energy in its mouth, looked especially creepy. Let's go. I yelled at Ako, who squeaked in surprise. I hope I won't have to go up against the Vaster Lords or the Arankars, and I'll somehow cope with the Ajuchas. Meanwhile, Jillian, a huge 15-meter empty one, threw a gray at me, the same that he was collecting at his mouth. The beam of energy passed within centimeters of me, after which I immediately retreated. The gray has slightly spoiled the landscape, and I don't mind being in its place. The sense of darkness showed that there were about 200 hollows and another 15 Jillians in the area. AKO takes on huge dimensions in a second, attacking Jillian, while I still find time to watch the quest. The Path of the Shinigami. You have found yourself in the presence of empty, spiritual entities with an unrefined soul. There is a choice: survive or die. Kill all hollows in the location, 0%. Attention! It is impossible to leave the dungeon until you complete a special quest. In principle, I expected something like this. I hope the location here isn't too big, otherwise I'll be too tired to kill everyone. At least it's a desert and not a jungle. There. You will find Zerg, there. I didn't notice the multi-story lair. The fight went on and on. It was not possible to devour the empty ones, since they were devoured by their own people, not letting me near. Minus manifestation of darkness. A stream of dark energy blows under 20 empty ones out of the way. Having materialized the deformation scythe, I run towards the nearest Jillian. Tatsuya fiercely cut all the hollows he came across on the way, furiously swinging his scythe. Dodging the small thorns of some creature that resembled a turtle, he swung his blade into its head, almost tearing it apart. Turning sharply, he blocked the hammer hand of another hollow, and then struck him with the second end of the scythe. The sharp blade entered the creature's flesh quite easily, causing it to squeal and try to close the distance. The kunai with explosive seals sent flying killed 5 more in addition to the hammerman. Intuition howled like a wounded beast, and Tatsuya bent down slightly, passing a long bone spear over him. Turning around, he noticed how another empty one was running towards him at a decent speed, shaped like a deer, which an inept chimerologist crossed with a jaguar. A swing of the scythe, and the beast is torn into pieces. Gray passed within millimeters of him, forcing him to remember why he even climbed into this pile of all sorts of creatures. Jillian once again began to gather energy, and so Tatsuya hurried to close the distance, ending up under the feet of the huge creature. Manifestation of darkness, Uzumaki exclaimed, after which a wave of energy erupted from his palm. Jillian was killed, but the fact that the shelling did not stop was unpleasant. Tatsuya hurriedly accelerated, trying to reach the next Jillian, which AKO was flying next to, successfully suppressing another giant. Successfully dodging all sorts of bone, poison and similar spikes, he furiously kicked the hollow he got in the way, throwing him back several meters. Tatsuya felt himself entering a rage, and with the laughter of an inveterate villain, he began to rapidly kill the nearest hollows. How fun this is! He shouted, after which Gray flew into his forehead. Leaning back on the ground, Tatsuya even screamed in surprise. The Zero did not cause any noticeable harm, only a slight sting. Yes, it's simple. Tatsuya ran towards the crowd of Jillians, who were already launching more Zero at him. Feeling immortal, the guy bare-chested, his outerwear was hidden in the seal just in case, jumped onto the Gray. As expected, the burst of energy did not harm him. Like a Terminator, he ran stubbornly against the Jillians, and soon stopped a few meters away from them. Just as he was about to kill everyone with the manifestation of darkness, he saw the Jillians working together to create a large Zero. Okay, we live for fun. Raising his hand and gathering chakra, Tatsuya met a clot of dark red energy, after which he pathetically tore it into pieces. He was about to kill the giant hollows, when Gray flew into his shoulder from behind. From the impulse, he flew 5 meters, after which he plowed the same distance with his nose. Minus. The guy yelled, looking at his injured left shoulder. It bled slightly, but the wound quickly closed. Thanking his innate regeneration for the umpteenth time, he stood up and turned around. The next moment, he materialized a scythe in his hand, instantly repelling the attack of the strange hollow. Quite small, only 2 meters. Long claws and a humanoid body. The mask resembled both a cat and a monkey. Ajukas, Tatsuya guessed, attacking the hollow in response. And what did the man forget in Hueco Mundo? And how were you able to cover such a large piece of space? Ajuchas asked in a hoarse voice, looking at the guy. He was surprised that the inhabitants of the dungeon had intelligence. Or is it just a built-in algorithm? It's none of your business, Tatsuya answered both questions, rushing into battle. Crossing his scythe with the monster's claws, he was completely unprepared for having a clot of dark red energy practically spat out in his face. This was the second time Tatsuya fell, this time with a wound on his left wrist, which he used to cover himself. Minus manifestation of darkness. He yelled, destroying the hollow. Although he was almost able to leave. AKO, who had already lost her enormous form, landed on her head with a squeak. Minus, master, there are many of them. She squealed, pointing her wings somewhere to the side. There, 500 meters away. Crowds of ordinary hollows and Jillians were running in a rapid stream under the control of 6 Ajuchas. Let's go. Tatsuya repeated for the second time that day, running away from the hollows. AKO, flapping her wings, followed him, and they disappeared into the desert. 11 hours later. Remaining in rags, holding his bleeding left hand, Tatsuya with a battered AKO on his head looked at the last inhabitant of this location. It would be fine if it were just empty. Yes, even Jillian or Ajukas. But not Vaster Lord. Just so as not to die in the dungeon, Tatsuya sighed, looking at Vaster Lord, who had evolved from, apparently, a reptile, since the scales, long tail and forked tongue indicated this. Maybe we can go our separate ways? Uzumaki suggested peacefully, trying to get at least a minute to rest. For the 11th hour now, he had been fighting the empty ones without a break. Everything that was used was darkness, explosive seals of varying degrees of danger, barriers, elemental seals, paralyzing seals, almost all throwing weapons in stock. And so, as the crown of all adventures, he met Vaster Lord when he finished off the last hollow. Almost 20 Ajuchas, with 100 Jillians and 600 empty ones, quite a significant figure. It seems that he was even given some kind of achievement, but in the heat of battle it was not possible to check it. Another disadvantage was that it was impossible to absorb hollows. It would seem, here is concentrated spiritual energy, and even dark, fly under your chakra. But no, somehow the empty ones only disintegrated into atoms, leaving nothing behind. Vaster Lord looked with curiosity at the gloomy expression of the young man, who was not averse to running away. That's exactly what I was looking at, since a rather cute face, a good figure and long white hair indicated that she was female. No? Okay. I take out a scythe, which I can barely hold in both hands due to damage to my left one. How infuriating. The lizard girl takes out a long naginata, after which she takes an unfamiliar fighting stance. There were seconds left before getting closer. The girl swung her naginata, fighting off AKO's attack. A flame gathered at the tip of the blade, which she shot at me. Her speed exceeds mine. I raise my scythe for a deceptive maneuver, but the Vaster Lord manages to repel both sides of my weapon. The reaction is clearly beyond the level of a jonin. Manifestation of darkness, a wave of my chakra rushed towards the hollow girl, but she was able to dodge the wide-range attack. Taking advantage of the fact that she was momentarily distracted, I quickly approached her, giving AKO the command. The mouse attacked from the other side, and I was already preparing for a cutting blow. But suddenly the Vaster Lord began to emit a wave of heat, and in a moment it almost fried my pet. Throwing the remaining explosive seals at the hollow, without waiting for the explosion, I threw a pair of shuriken after them. Jumping high, she managed to escape both attacks. I throw 5 kunai, after which I make the seals. Minus shadow copy technique. 5 kunai turned into 100. The Vaster Lord, who did not expect this, did not have time to react and did not have time to dodge. A couple of kunai hit her accurately, but they didn't do much damage. AKO assumes a large size and then uses the manifestation of darkness. I again tried to close the distance, to which the girl responded with a volley of fireballs. Not empty, but some kind of ifrit. After an hour and a half, 1.5 degrees. Hours into the battle, AKO and I were able to take down this Chan. Half of her mask was cut off, revealing her beautiful face. Alas, we could not see the eyes, and I could only contemplate her thin lips. Her half-dead body lay a meter away from me. Okay, last takeover attempt. Attention! The absorbed soul is partially damaged. Do you want to continue? Yes. After my answer, the girl simply disappeared, absorbed into me. She didn't even mummify herself, which is strange. The next moment, a monstrous pain pierced my body, forcing me to open my mouth in a silent scream. The takeover is complete. Plus 43% fire affinity. Plus 37% to Yin affinity. Plus 25 to chakra. Here. That's what I call a real prize. Consciousness quickly plunged into darkness. AKO flew up to her owner with a squeak, seeing him fall exhausted. The location changed rapidly, and they found themselves in an occupied room. Mabui, who was sitting on the bed, jumped up in fear. Tatsuya was a half-dead carcass, his left arm was clearly dislocated. The chest and back were a complete burn, some muscles in the legs were torn, several ribs were cracked. How is he even alive with such and such wounds? Although the amazing vitality of Uzumaki showed up here too. Mabui did not dare to take the guy to the hospital, since, firstly, AKO clearly hinted at this, not allowing her to even raise Tatsuya. Secondly, the local hospital, as she found out, only had B-rank Irenans at most. Therefore, taking a deep breath, the girl began to heal. She knew Shosen Jutsu at a rather weak level, but she would have to be content with what she had. But not even a day had passed. Kushina was worried, which her teammates noticed. They successfully completed the mission, which lasted 2 weeks because they were at sea. The final goal was the country of the Claw, where the customer trader lived. The mission was boring, since there was nothing else besides the monotonous landscape of the sea. And after completing the task, they returned home. The reason for the scarlet-haired one's alarm was that the connection had been cut off again. She paced restlessly around the deck, hoping that he was all right. She is trying to meet him. It was already evening, and only she and Minato remained on the deck, as well as a couple of sailors who were minding their own business. Peering at the land on the horizon, which was marked on the map as the territory of the Land of Water, Yumiko Island, she thought about when the connection would be restored. Suddenly the connection was restored, causing her to cry out in excitement. Kushina, what happened? Minato approached her. Dressed in a blue turtleneck and dark trousers, he looked very cute. Of course, the most popular guy in the stream. But Kushina understood that he could not compare with him. For his sake she will even betray the village. She treasured every emotion that this connection conveyed, as if possessed. And nothing, everything's fine, she hesitated, but the next second she screamed loudly in pain. It was as if someone had hit her head with something heavy, and her lungs were burning, as if boiling water had been poured into it. The girl lost consciousness from pain. How can I? Oh, I feel like I swallowed this empty one in vain. How did I even manage to absorb it? She is also empty, albeit strong. The treasured hole that was in her stomach made it clear what race she belonged to. Which means it should have simply dried out. Or am I confusing something? If you think about it, I cut off her mask, which, in principle, I didn't do with the others. But she also had a decent level of strength. I have to admit, I pulled out of this fight only thanks to AKO. You need to quickly master the skill of your class, and also have normal ranged combat techniques. By the way, I raised my affinity with fire to 73%. The absorption of several hundred on the cursed island was not in vain, as was this vaster lord. An attempt to get out of bed ended in failure, and I decided to lie there longer, at the same time assessing what the system had in store for me. The growing pain made me grimace, after which, swearing through my teeth, I tried not to make sudden movements. My whole body was in bandages, I felt weak in my left arm, and it was as if hot metal had been poured into my lungs. So, it's time to see what they gave me there. The path of the Shinigami. You have found yourself in the presence of empty, spiritual entities with an unrefined soul. There is a choice, survive or die. Kill all the empty ones in the location, completed. For completing you get 200,000 experience. 350,000 Rio. Skill, 0. Oh, they even gave me 0. What a boon, that's just the equipment needed for long-range combat. By the way, after the first passage of the Zergs, I was given the partial transformation skill. So, this skill was safely forgotten under the impressions of the first playthrough. You will need to check what kind of skill this is. So, what else is there? Your affinity with the element of fire has exceeded 50%. Release available. Fire techniques are 30% stronger. Fire techniques consume 30% less chakra. Finally. I have lived to see this cherished day. That's it, now the chips will fly. Your affinity with Een has exceeded 50%. Genjutsu available. Techniques with a Een basis are 30% stronger. Techniques with a Een basis consume 30% less chakra. Also a nice bonus. Considering that I didn't intend to pump up Een at all, the value of 56% was very good. This means that Genjutsu is available to me, and this also means that the effect of these Genjutsu themselves will be weaker on me. What does this mean? This means that I covered the main drawback of Uzumaki, which was that my imbalance in Yang chakra was very large. Which significantly weakened some seals and techniques, since their execution mainly required Een chakra, which my relatives had little of. So, it also became noticeable that the chakra characteristic jumped over 200. You shouldn't be particularly deluded by this, since reserve does not mean control. I have everything on this point, and it's worth correcting. Well, that's later, but for now it's worth finding your pet and Mabui. The first one was found quite quickly, since a concentrated sphere of darkness hung under the ceiling of my rookery. And Mabui. So, 300 meters from here, he returns to our apartment at decent speed. And what is this? Kushina? I clearly felt the connection between us becoming clearer. Considering that I felt her this way only during my stay in Konoha, the conclusion is obvious, she is here. And she is unconscious. What happened while I was out? And how long did I lie there? I asked Mabui these questions when she entered the room. My voice was hoarse, but my calmed lungs began to ache again with renewed vigor. The girl shuddered and then looked at me. In her hands she was holding a bag of bandages. You have been sleeping for a day and a half since you arrived. I couldn't take you to the hospital, AKO was against it. Everything is fine, I did the right thing. Continue, it wasn't enough for all sorts of personalities to examine me. What's wrong with Kushina? So much time has passed. She must have already reached the Chunin level. And also she has been next to Minato for half a year now, we need to visit her. Konoha shinobi stopped in the city. The standard team is a Jonin and 3 Genin. There was a red-haired girl there, she was taken to the hospital, which means I wasn't stoned, and Kushina is really here. As soon as I'm cured, I'll go straight to her. If she doesn't get on her feet before me. Is she seriously injured? Apparently not. I didn't notice any dangerous wounds. That's how it is. Okay, rest for now. Tatsuya-sama, Mabui hesitated. Yes? Minus your bandages. They need to be changed. Huh. Oh yes, thank you. To my surprise, I was able to recover in 2 days. As I learned, Kushina had not yet left the hospital, and I could visit her. But standing a few blocks from her location, I wondered how to deal with those shinobi who secretly guard her. It's not surprising that several jonin are being nursed by Jinchuriki. I'd be surprised if Konoha didn't do this. Especially in conditionally hostile territory. Now I was faced with a dilemma. Should I visit Kushina or should I leave? Of course, I could take her. Again. But why? I could have done this even then. But even now I am not strong enough to silence the mouths of those who will run into trouble if I take the Jinchuriki. And for the whole world to chase me. No, I don't care, I'm even for it if I can absorb shinobi for free. But this will absolutely affect my loved ones. The Uzumaki do not yet have a solid basis for showdowns with other villages. But I can't allow Kushina to start a relationship with Minato. But what if? I want Kushina for myself. But let this blonde one break off. Moreover, Kushina is an Uzumaki, and who will I be if I can't even visit my clanmate? The shinobi on guard are a problem in themselves, as both are jonin. You won't be able to defeat them without noise. How difficult it is to decide. Also, Kushina clearly senses me. I felt how happy she was, and then hope flared inside her along with panic. Oh, how I want to not care about everything and take her. Kushina looked expectantly from the window to the door. She felt that he was close. And he knows that she is here. Maybe he'll take her with him. When will she get rid of the hostility of the people of Konoha and go free to travel, like him? In the morning, Kushina felt the ship with him leaving the island. The scarlet-haired woman sobbed, feeling regret and sadness through the connection. Why? Why did he leave her? What was the reason? Maybe she wasn't strong enough? The girl just buried herself in the pillow, desperately trying not to cry. She must be strong. The time has not yet come. How can I? Ovo. I left the island without any purpose, since I could not foresee this. Kushina would have gone looking for me if I had stayed on the island, and these jonins would have been interested in who caught the attention of the Jinchuriki. For now, I don't want special attention to my person, since they can dissect me because of my genome. I have to get to Jiraiya's level faster so I can fight that Nadeshiko girl. Jiraiya has just begun to participate in the war and will later receive the title of Sannin, which means that he has a long way to go. By the way, inconsistencies with time in this world are a little unnerving. For example, take the fog, where I am now. Already, he has a reputation as the Bloody Mist, which should have only been gained with the rise to power of Yagura, who came under the control of Obito. Yagura is in power, but Obito is still a small child who, not only the Mangekyo, but has not even awakened the ordinary Sharingan. This means that Yagura is controlled by someone else. But who? Well, not Madara himself. In theory, it should be underground and not protrude, as life forces leave. But besides him, there are no actively villainous Uchihas. Unless Obito is older than his teacher here. Or perhaps there is someone else who is also manipulating Yagura. The third option is that Yagura is initially a rare creature. Although this version is hard to believe, since the boy in the canon looked painfully peaceful when he met Naruto, this option should not be ruled out. It's a pity for the kid, he just came to power and has already fallen under someone's control. Okay, time to stop with this. I need to start leveling up the katan to diversify my arsenal with something long-range. Seals with Yamaton, of course, are imbued, but the first one burns my bloodline too much, and the second gives a hint that an ownerless shinobi has appeared with a strong Kekii Genkai. But simple katon techniques will not give me away. 3 days later we successfully landed on the island of Yageo, located in the eastern waters of the Country of Water. Some kind of tautology turned out. So, Yageo Island was small, that even a port town could easily be called a village. The population is small, only 500-odd people. Also, traders did not often stop at Yageo, so we were lucky, because our ship sailed through this island. The reason for choosing this place was obvious, because shinobi rarely dropped in here. Having rented a small house on the outskirts, we began a quick upgrade. Mabui, although she was surprised by our shameful escape, did not say a word. I hope we won't stay here for long. A month later. Mei-sama, they are pushing us back, exclaimed a guy with straight gray hair with a blue tint. Closing his eyes, he concentrated, preparing to determine the exact coordinates. Ao, how many are there? 24 against 7 of us, said Ao, jumping up from his seat and taking out a kunai from his pouch. Yagura stooped so low that he set up an ambush right at the negotiation site. Get ready. Ninpo, Kirigakure no Jutsu. The fog quickly began to hide the silhouette of the shinobi, giving them the opportunity to counterattack. But everything started out fine. Yagura agreed to negotiations, which they decided to hold on Akiko, an island that was neutral territory due to its small size and lack of population, and therefore had no strategic importance. They barely managed to enter a small abandoned village, which they had left 5 years ago, when they were attacked by a large group of shinobi. Mei-sama, I feel several people approaching us from the direction of the sea. Civilians, Ao suddenly frowned. Mei sighed, deciding what to do with them. Send one, let him take them and run away from here. But Mei-sama. They are ordinary civilians. This could be a trap. No buts, Ao. Don't forget who we are fighting for. We fight for an oppressed people. Fulfill. Wait, Mei-sama. They are quickly approaching us. Minus. Take it. Let's retreat. The girl began to make seals with lightning speed. Minus Yotan, lava lump. The lava flow quickly blocked the path of the advancing shinobi, giving theirs time to retreat. Without wasting any time, the girl made another series of seals. Minus Yotan, lava blanket. The red-haired girl exhaled a huge stream of lava, which completely blocked the path for the attackers. Suetun, pillar of water, came from the other side, and the lava began to quickly cool. Meanwhile, Mei caught up with her subordinates, who had already met with 2 civilians. Apparently, Ao mixed up something. Although no, he was completely mistaken. How can a person with such a huge reserve be confused with a civilian? And his girlfriend had the reserve of an average jonin, not taking into account that small bat that was sitting on the guy's shoulder. The guy standing in front of her subordinates was handsome and tall. Black hair and brown eyes were all impressive, but his childish faces made it clear that he was just a teenager. Although anything is possible. The girl next to the brunette could also boast of a beautiful appearance. Silver hair and a good breast size, which, as Mei noted, was not much inferior to her own. Ao, who are they? She asked her subordinate, who frowned at the duo. I don't know, Mei-sama. But they are clearly not who they tried to pretend to be. Minus, what do you need? The girl turned to 2 non-civilians. Nothing, Mei-san. We came to your rescue, the guy smiled. For some reason I didn't see you among my warriors. Who you are? Minus ordinary mercenaries who work for money, Mei-san. But so be it, the first time will be free. The girl did not expect anything good from these 2 suspicious types, but there was no time to talk. If they help, let them help. And after, we will have to keep our people behind. If victory is theirs, then it will be possible to easily capture the exhausted mercenaries and interrogate them. Okay, I accept your help. That's great, the guy smiled, materializing a strange braid in his hand. It was the first time Mei had seen such an exotic weapon, and judging by the looks of her subordinates, they also did not know what kind of weapon the guy was holding in his hand. The double-sided scythe was beautiful to look at, but the ease of use of such a weapon was questionable. Meanwhile, the enemy shinobi had already managed to reach them. Yotan, magma flow, the red-haired girl exhaled a whole wave of magma, which the enemies, unfortunately, dodged. Suetan, water spout. A huge wave of water rushed into them, which continued to gain height. The swirling water could cause enormous damage to internal organs due to the pressure created. Shinobi from both sides engaged in close combat, although only the arriving mercenaries showed particular activity. The guy took some strange pose, after which he quickly twirled the scythe in his hand, feeding chakra into his weapon, turning it dark. So it's chakra-conducting steel, thought Terumi, watching as the brunette killed one enemy Chunin with a precise blow. Looking at him, Mei almost missed the enemy's kunai, which managed to leave a cut on her clothes. Rushing into close combat, the red-haired woman imbued her hand with Yotan chakra, after which she slammed into the nearest enemy. He tried to cover himself with his tanto. But the weapon instantly melted, and the girl's next blow took the life of the enemy shinobi. The redhead looked towards the mercenary's partner, who quickly dealt with the enemy using the element of lightning. Futen, acid fog. A stream of hot air instantly sent 3 shinobi to the forefathers, after which the rest decided to retreat. Kato, fire blade, the brunette suddenly waved his scythe, after which a compressed wave of fire burst from his scythe, killing 2 more. They're kind of weak, I said, looking at how the attackers fled. Realistically, they could have sent stronger people. Still, the opponents are the leader of the rebels, who in the future will become the Mizukage. A very beautiful Mizukage. I looked at the young girl, who could hardly be 20 years old. The higher powers did not deprive her of her shape and figure, as well as her pretty face. So, let's not get distracted. In theory, these 20 holes could have been soaked without us, they are too fragile. There are only 6 jonins, while in Mei's group, not counting herself, all 6 are jonins. And she herself will give the Sanins a light. Now let's talk, dear mercenaries, Mei grinned, looking at us. I'm already prepared to activate a big boom if they get aggressive. Let's talk, I nodded. Mei-sama, maybe, a guy with gray hair, whom I barely recognized as AO, was about to speak out. He was too young, and he didn't have a Byakugan in his right eye. No, Mei snapped, looking at me. AO just frowned and then walked over to the rest of the jounin. One received a rather serious injury. Fortunately one of the shinobi had a decent level of command of the mystical hand. So you came to help us. May I know why? Minus what might a mercenary need? I asked. Even though my wallet had lost a lot of weight after the meeting with my clanmates, I still had a decent amount. The current Mizukage has more money, AO quickly crushed my argument. I sighed, realizing that I shouldn't have climbed in without thinking through anything. But Mabui warned. Okay. The truth is, I want to test my skills and gain experience. And I don't like Yagura's regime. Oh, so you're not from the fog. So why should you care? You're right, I'm an ordinary nuke-nin. But Yagura killed my relatives. You could say I'm helping you just to get to him, well, that's almost true. Yagura didn't arouse any hatred in me, but for the sake of the clan it was worth killing him. So, personal scores. You can say so. Then I think I can accept you and your companion into our ranks, Mei said, smiling. Even if they accepted us in words, there is just no trust. At the first suspicion they will attack us. But it's okay, it wasn't in vain that I spent a month swinging, I'll get used to it. And Mabui will not remain on the sidelines. Give your name. Tatsuya, just Tatsuya, I added, looking her straight in the eyes. Mabui, the white-haired girl said quietly. Well, you seem to know me, but I'll still introduce myself. Terumi Mei, rebel leader. What can I say? The rebels settled down in all comfort. Kisho Island, a fairly large piece of land, was located in the northeast of the country of the sea, that is, very close to the country of Fang. I must admit, their condition is not as bad as I expected. On the side of our allies, there were two swordsmen, Juzo Biwa, who was shown little in the canon due to the fact that he was successfully killed by Yagura, and also Akabino Jinin. So far he is quite a young guy of about 23, short in stature, but with a strong physique. Accordingly, they are the owners of Kubikaribocho and Kabutawari. It's a pity that Samahata with that explosive. Shibuki's sword seems to be out of stock. I really want to see how the creation of explosive seals was automated there. Although, the fact that they are against us is even better, because it is much easier to take it from enemies than from an ally. Now we were at the rebel base, which was located in the forest. The forest covered the island almost completely, which was pleasing, because otherwise it would have been a big hassle to rebuild such a camp. They'll be easy to find. And you'll also need to get building materials somewhere. The camp was a rather sickly complex of hastily assembled houses made of wood, stone, doton to the rescue, and other building materials that did not require careful processing. The rebels were all bustling about, some were building houses, some were preparing snacks, and those who had at least some ironing skills were treating their brothers. We, in the company of Mei and her assistants, were approaching the largest building here, a two-story house, made, unlike other buildings, to last. A wooden house with a small balcony on the second floor, and this during the Civil War. The rebels are doing something wrong. Or I'm wrong, and the house has been here for a long time. Okay, extra thoughts. Having entered the house, we quickly settled down in something that resembled a living room, after which we began to discuss further plans. No, we have not yet been accepted into the company, but this moment is already close. Terumi Mei looked puzzled at the guy who appeared so unexpectedly and on time that it even became funny. If they were spies for Yagura or another person who decided to somehow harm the rebels, they would not have attacked right at the moment of the attack, timing it almost perfectly. Well, aren't they that stupid? There is an option that she seriously overestimated the intelligence of some individuals, but somehow I couldn't believe it. This means that it is true that they are mercenaries. Veiled, distorted to the point of madness, but true. Or they are not mercenaries at all. I don't care though. As long as they don't harm her people. After discussing the details of the mercenary, the guy, the girl and the pet quickly took their leave. Having sent one of the people to show the mercenaries their future place of residence, Mei just sighed, looking at the dissatisfied faces of her subordinates. Mei-sama, why did you decide to take these two to us? I don't want to hint at anything, but, a guy a little older than her, who was always famous for his impulsiveness, spoke up. Short black hair, strange red eyes, similar to the Uchiha clan's dojutsu. Except that there were no commas, but it would be difficult to tell the difference from a distance. Nobuo, this guy is not so stupid as to go into the enemy camp in the company of an average, almost weak jonin, as well as some kind of pet. He's strong, but not that strong. But, Mei-sama, don't you think it's suspicious that they arrived at such a good time? Ao wondered. I thought about this too. But no, Yagura is not that kind of person. He would rather have sent his spies a little later to make everything look more natural. However, monitoring them must be strict, since we cannot rely on words. He may not be Yagura's spy, but it is a fact that he wants something from us. Now let's move on to more important problems. The negotiations, as you understand, have broken down, and the height of the war is approaching. We need to provide ourselves with everything necessary to successfully repel the attacks of Yagura, who was waiting for exactly this. Mei-sama, I have a question. We were given a small wooden hut at the very edge of the camp. This is becoming a tradition. My accommodation, excluding any motels, is always on the edge. Having unloaded all the necessary junk, Mabui and I set about preparing the new place of residence to our requirements, while AKO settled into the new ceiling. Of course, not royal mansions, but the housing was also built well. A small, but quite strong and comfortable one-room house. Mabui, due to the long time of living together in general, as well as the frequent sharing of the same room with me in particular, has long lost the embarrassment of changing clothes, sleeping, and so on. Why am I saying this? Because this troublemaking, actually well-developed Chan was now changing her clothes right in front of me. Not only did she change her dress, but also her underwear, opening up a view of her fully formed curves. Oh, your hormones. Meanwhile, while I was hastily suppressing, trying to, the body's reaction to this sight, Mabui had already changed clothes and was now looking at me incomprehensibly. Minus Tatsuya-sama? Yes, Mabui? Answered, trying to take his eyes off her body. No, we urgently need to do something about this. And Mabui, as luck would have it, wore a turtleneck and tight pants, which together made a killer outfit. The girl's shape beckoned the eye. What happened with me? I wanted to ask, she stopped, her gaze making it clear that the conversation was not for prying ears. Turning on the soundproof seal already installed at the door, I turned my gaze to it. Why did we join the rebels? There are only 700 of them, in contrast to the forces of Yagura, who has more than 2,500 shinobi. Maybe we should have stayed away. The difference in quantity is more than 3 times. Isn't this a losing option? No. 700 shinobi against 2,500 is understandable. But you forgot which shinobi oppose each other. Clan shinobi with clanless ones. Even if this sounds a little arrogant, the point is that clan shinobi are several times stronger than ordinary ones. A special element, body structure, and innate supernatural abilities distinguish clan shinobi from clanless shinobi, who only in rare cases have amazing abilities. Like you, for example. The cruel reality is that most clanless shinobi are cannon fodder in war. Especially genins. That is, the rebel forces outweigh? This cannot be said. The clanless may not have genes with rare abilities, but they are led by the 3-tailed Jinchuriki. What about the 6-tails? Asked Mabui. I don't know. They say he disappeared. Disappeared? Rokubi's Jinchuriki has not been seen for a year. I see. Thank you for the explanation, Tatsuya-sama, the girl unexpectedly thanked. I froze for a moment, since this was the first time I heard thank you from this person. She probably said this before, but now I seemed to feel how the relationship between us was becoming warmer. Within a month, I made significant progress in ninjutsu, and was also able to master previously missed abilities. At the moment, I had 7 katan techniques with me, which I practiced over the course of a month. And I managed to master the first dance of my unique hemorrhoid style. What can I say? Paired with my scythe, the style goes very well, because there the main emphasis was on dexterity, which also required the ability to wield a scythe. I didn't go to the middle level of the empty dungeon, because last time I got quite a lot, and I still didn't have any particular desire to get it in the same way. Therefore, all that was left was to pump at a frantic pace. Mabui has also raised her level to an average jonin, and has already begun to master some seals. Adding to this that Mabui has progressed in her teleportation technique and can move things at a higher frequency, it can easily be assumed that she becomes a dangerous opponent. Tomorrow, Mabui and I will have to help the rebels during the capture of Yori Island. A small but important island near the main islands of Yagura. The island is important because there is chakra-conducting steel there, which in this world was more expensive than gold. Since this metal was an excellent conductor of chakra, unlike ordinary steel, and its strength was high, the demand for it was high. On the island itself there was only a small warehouse with this metal, but it was still useful to the fogs, who were famous for their swordsmen. The task will be difficult, since Yagura will not leave such a place unattended. However, it will still be useful to me. It was not for nothing that I joined the ranks of the rebels. Still, it's easier to cut down the clanless, and the absorption can be legalized as a strange effect of my scythe. I need to get stronger to fight that Chan from Nadeshiko, but to get stronger in a short time, without using a little, not accepted approaches are a mess. I'm still not a fierce bender with endless endurance. Yes, and, Kachatsa, that's right, with a capital letter, I'm lazy. By the way, about one bun that I conveniently forgot about. Or rather, about partial transformation. So, I missed the skill in vain. Overall, this is a must-see. Partial transformation. Level 5. You can partially change shape, acquiring the characteristics of the chosen creature. The stronger the creature, the greater the energy expenditure. Available. Zergling, plus 20% agility, plus 20% strength. Hydralisk. Plus 10% to agility, plus 10% to speed, plus 20% to strength, bone spikes skill. Inspiring. Zergling was available to me initially, and the Hydralisk was recently unlocked when I reached level 5. During the transformation into a Zergling, I grew claws and fangs, which, however, did not change my appearance that much. But the transformation into a Hydralisk surprised me. In addition to the fact that there were characteristics of a Zergling, my height increased to 2.5 meters, and I also became wider in the shoulders. Muscles were gaining, which allowed me to launch bone spikes. If I'm not mistaken, the Hydralisks played the role of a launcher precisely with muscles, of which there were a great many. I, unlike them, launched throwing dice using chakra, and the location was different, in my hands. In short, you can say that for the uninitiated, I will pass for a representative of the Kagaya clan. After the first transformation, and also after reaching the 5th level with the transformation into a Hydralisk, I received reputation points with Kerrigan. Yes, with that same Queen of Blades. Unexpectedly, of course, but not that much. Mabui reacted suspiciously calmly to my transformation skill, who was only a little surprised, but then got used to it. Now let's move on to the cons. More precisely, to the minus. A lot of chakra was wasted. It's not for me to cheat with such a reserve, but shadow clones, compared to partial transformation, looked like a very economical technique. There seem to be no other bad sides to this skill. And it's easy to swing, you just need to turn on the skill and walk around in this form. The longer, the more experience. Okay. It's worth resting before tomorrow's mission. Having turned on the protective, signaling and screening barriers, I walked over to the bed where Mabui was already sleeping. Her open shoulders made the girl look so seductive, and her hair, which had grown considerably during this time, was scattered across the pillow, creating a dizzying image. Sighing, he crawled under the blanket. Turning away, I quickly fell asleep, noting at the edge of my consciousness how the girl sleepily hugged my shoulder. Our squad of 50 shinobi was approaching Yori Island. A small, unremarkable island, if not for one peculiarity. Chakra-conducting steel has always been in short supply, so its deposits and processing sites were under careful control. That is why there were no Chunin among our squad, only Jounin. Everyone understood the importance of the mission, because it was the export of chakra-conducting steel that allowed the economy of the mist to stand on a par with the rest of the great Gakurazato. Well, what can I say, there's not much money to be made on the archipelago, except perhaps with fish, but the country of the sea dominates here. This is not the land of the rising sun on Earth, where the islanders were able to perform an economic miracle. There was only one way out, trade in chakra-conducting steel, which is one of the main reasons for the location of the country of water here. There was an abnormally large amount of this metal in these waters. And now we were going to devastate, and in extreme cases, seize reserves of chakra-conducting steel. A banal robbery. But this is a war, even a civil one, all means are good here. Especially if the target is such a huge warehouse of metal, which could have a great impact on the future of the fog. No, there was no question of trust on the part of the rebels, even though I was assigned this task. I could feel the surveillance constantly, and it was clear that in case of the slightest danger I would be quickly killed. Among the crowd of fogs, Mabui and I stood out very much, because they only knew approximately the level of our strength. And yet, why were we sent on such an important mission? A. Knows him. There are many options. Our small boat was quickly approaching the island. Our squad was led by AO, the right hand of the future Mizukage. Of course, he doesn't have a Byakugan yet, but that doesn't change the fact that he's a strong Jonin. Okay, it's time to reconnoiter the situation. There are 53 enemy shinobi on the island, AO informed everyone. 200, I corrected him. Everyone looked at me in confusion. What? The squad leader looked at me. There are 234 shinobi on the island, to be more precise. Most are sitting under some kind of concealing barrier, I said. The sense of darkness detected everyone, as well as a barrier that shielded chakra, thereby preventing normal sensors from detecting those hiding. The barrier is the work of Uzumaki, since only our masters can create such a mass. So you are also a sensor? Asked one of the Jounins. Although I clearly felt how my observers tensed, because this meant that I had spotted them a long time ago. There are a few. What else is a little? Only strong sensors can sense shinobi under the shielding barrier. A peculiarity from birth, I answered honestly. Still, I have had Yamaton since I came into this world, and you can't call it anything other than birth, or rather, rebirth. So, an ambush awaited us. We have a mole. Everyone immediately turned their gaze to me, noticeably tense. A couple even grabbed their weapons. AKO squeaked threateningly as Mabui prepared to fight. Hey, don't get so excited. I'm not a spy, I waved my hands, mentally giving AKO the command to calm down. He's not a spy, AO confirmed. Why? He just joined us, and an ambush awaits us right away, said one kunoichi with brown hair. She seems to be from the Yuki clan. That's it. He only joined us yesterday, so he couldn't pass this information on to the enemies. The plan has been discussed for 4 days already, and even the fastest pigeon will fly to Kirigakura for at least a week. But he could have conveyed information in another way. Excluded, it was clear from AO's look that there would be no further discussion in my presence. Perhaps his argument is an observation of me yesterday. Although, judging by the looks and a couple of gestures unfamiliar to me, they had already solved the problem of my espionage. No, really, what kind of nonsense is this? I just arrived. Even the most mediocre spy will not send information after the first days of implementation. If a spy sent information about our mission, then he should have leaked information about our base. Commander, maybe we should go back, suggested one of the Jounins. Oh, Hozuki. No. If information about the base is transmitted to the enemy, then it is clear that the battle is going on there too. Most likely, we had the mole for a long time, but he was waiting for the right moment. We must complete the operation, everyone nodded at AO's words. Within a second everyone was concentrating on the task. Amazing discipline. Their families there are under possible threat, but they are ready to continue the mission. In general, they stopped considering me a spy, although some were wary. Having moored to the island on the side opposite to where the warehouses were located, we immediately ran deep into a small forest. The ship then set off, heading towards the warehouses. The plan was simple: we take out all the goods we found, and if we fail to capture the island, then we dump it with the help of an approaching ship. It's like we're going to rob a bank. The same situation, a fight, theft of a valuable metal, in our case not gold, but chakra steel, and the subsequent escape with the help of the homies who came to the rescue. Okay, time to get down to business. We are quickly approaching the warehouses, where an ambush is already waiting for us. The barrier was abruptly removed, after which an avalanche of techniques and throwing iron fell on us. Unfortunately for Yagura's supporters, the ambush was expected, and we easily escaped the attack. A crowd of contacts immediately rushed towards us. Hayutan, ice blades, said that kunoichi from Yuki. In the blink of an eye, ice formed from the air, taking the form of sharp blades. And then this plagiarism of one well-known futon technique went towards the attackers with decent speed. Although, we are the attackers. Suetun, water sphere, the opponents fought back. The blades simply got stuck in the thick wall of water without reaching their target. Futton, acid breath, one of ours, quickly getting close enough, took advantage of the moment. From the Furukawa clan, whose existence I only recently learned about. In canon, this clan has already disappeared, or they simply weren't shown to us. However, their genome is the element of steam, which is very impressive. I remember it was Terumi Mei's fairy that injured Sasuke's Susanu's ribs. The exchange of techniques developed into close combat, where I dominated. I decided to finally check out my class's first dance. Dance 1, Shadow Threads, I whispered, watching out of the corner of my eye as Mabui hit one of the swordsmen with a raiton, after which AO finished off the enemy. The shadow threads resembled salsa, but my partner was my braid, with which I spun in a crazy dance. There was a rhythm in my head known only to me, to which I burst into the ranks of the enemies, smoothly but quickly wielding my scythe. Several sharp movements forward, and then a slightly slower transition of the scythe to the other hand. It was like I was dancing in the middle of a field, but I didn't experience any discomfort. A sharp lunge, and another Chunin falls with a severe wound in his chest. A turn and another blow, the enemy dies. Without leaving the circle known only to me, I successfully repelled the sword's thrust, after which I twisted my partner, my scythe, repelling 2 Chunin. A smooth movement to the side, after which dark flashes from my chakra securely anchor the enemy, who freezes for a moment. A sharp swing of the scythe, and the enemy falls with a severed head. Crouching slightly, I dodge the long sword of the second Chunin, after which I throw my scythe at him. The Chunin, who did not expect this, quickly dies, and the scythe is instantly attracted to me by dark threads. The music doesn't stop for a second, forcing me to continue dancing. 2 steps forward, after which I bump into the Jounin. Kato, fire blade, I say quickly, after which, along with a smooth but quick swing of the scythe, a wave of fire breaks from the blade. The Jounin manages to dodge, and then attacks me with a pair of kunai with explosive seals. Instead of jumping to the side, I rush forward, deflecting kunai. The Jounin does not have time to completely dodge my swing, receiving an impressive wound on his stomach. Not so deep, but this is enough for the enemy to retreat. Kato, fireball, I send the technique after him, but his comrades cover him, meeting my attack with a water shield. Looking back, I realized that the so-called ambush had been successfully defeated. More precisely, ours simply crushed this pile, without particularly straining. But why does intuition signal impending trouble? Having broken through the barrier, our detachment quickly penetrated into the enemy camp, where the battle continued. Part of our detachment went to engage in robbery under the cover of the rest. AO successfully fulfilled the role of commander, quickly suppressing his opponents. Hayatan, cooling ray, I heard the name of the technique, after which I barely escaped the attack from behind. Having prepared for the attack, I was quite surprised to see the embarrassed Kunoichi. Sorry, Tatsuya-kun, she said guiltily, and then immediately continued the battle. Well, and this is a Jounin. Nothing, Yuki-san. The further battle proceeded at a fast pace. We successfully suppressed the opponents, although there were also wounded. 7 already had serious wounds, but were holding out for now. There were 2 Irionans in the detachment, who were now hastily providing assistance to one seriously wounded man. The explosion grazed his leg, leaving his bones in a mess. It is clear that it will not be possible to provide full-fledged medical care, but the Irenans can anesthetize and stop the bleeding, which is what they do. "We're done," came from the side of the looters, who were currently barely fighting off the advancing enemies who were trying to return the medals stolen and sealed in scrolls. "Tatsuya, help them!" Ao exclaimed, after which I rushed to the rescue without further ado. "He is the commander, it's up to him to decide." "Kato, curtain of fire," I said, folding the seal of the tiger, and exhaled a fiery avalanche that blocked the enemy's path. Ours managed to retreat, after which I decided to complete everything with an epic technique in order to secure my status as a strong katan user, which was a rarity in Mizu no Kuni. Of course, fire is weaker than water, but on such a scale you cannot stop the flames. Kato, hellish wave. A quarter of the reserve was gone, but I saw how an ordinary technique of rank B brought death to 20 Chunin and Jounin. In a second, a huge wave of scarlet flame filled the entire visible area, and the disgusting smell of burning flesh filled my nose. Looking around, I noticed the surprised looks of my allies, who, fortunately, quickly came to their senses and were now heading to the docks to escape with the help of a ship. Having left a couple of dozen seals, I followed them, after which, after walking some distance, I formed a seal of concentration. "Minus cats!" I exclaimed. A second later, seals thundered behind me, and the screams finally convinced me that I had hit someone. Coming to the coast, we saw our ship approaching us from the west, only another one was approaching from the opposite side. Small but maneuverable. On our ship stood a gray-haired, short boy with a stitched scar on his left cheek. Dressed in green clothes and carrying a staff with a green flower at the end, the guy looked harmless. But everyone, including me, felt a disgusting feeling of fear. It was Yagura. Our entire squad rushed into battle without a word, running across the water surface. Yagura also ran towards us, after which, with a sharp, almost indistinguishable movement, he grabbed one of the Jonins by the throat. Yagura immediately covers his eyes with his staff, where kunai fly in a moment later. Minus Hayatan, ice hail. Minus Suetun, water cannon. Minus Suetun, water bullets. Minus Futun, steam flow. Techniques instantly flew towards Yagura, which he quickly repelled with the help of a water mirror, or dodged them. The shinobi remaining in his hand was able to form seals, after which, he blew himself up, leaving an impressive burn on Yagura's hand. Gosha. The Jonin was torn to pieces in his hands, and he escaped with a burn, albeit a dangerous one. Yes, it should have been turned around on the spot. Once again I was shocked and the wound began to regenerate. Ov Jinchuriki. Mabui looked with concern at the gloomy face of the fourth Mizukiage, who was spinning his staff, nullifying all attempts to get it. Suetun, deadly rain, Yagura suddenly said, folding the seals. The drops of water, which instantly became fatal, inflicted unexpectedly serious wounds on the Jonin who did not have time to dodge. She herself would not have been able to escape from the attack if not for the help of Tatsuya, who pulled her out of the area of effect in time. Meanwhile, the Jonins had already begun to use serious jutsu, and with one successful technique, Yagura was thrown towards the coast, from where the Mizukiage subordinates had just fled. Growling, Yagura quickly became covered in chakra, after which he turned into a huge turtle-like creature. With a wave of his paw, the monster calmly held back the incoming techniques, after which he created a shock wave with a roar. The rebels began to quickly jump onto the ship, and then one of the Jounins with light blue skin began to make seals at breakneck speed. Minus Suetun, great wave. He shouted, after which a huge wave picked up the ship, carrying it towards the open sea. We'll stop him. A dozen Jounins exclaimed simultaneously, after which they jumped from the ship to the surface of the water. Mabui looked with some sadness at the people who decided to sacrifice their lives for the sake of their comrades. The three-tailed bijou had already begun to form a huge black ball, which he was about to send in their direction. But the Jounin were able to break the concentration of the tailed monster, after which the angry demon tore one Jounin into pieces with a wave of his hand. Mabui looked around, noticing with surprise that no one was looking back. Only she. Even Tatsuya only looked forward. The girl just sighed, realizing that war cannot happen without casualties. The outcome of the war is one. Just like then. We had been sailing for 7 hours in a direction known only to fogmen. A ship of Yagura's supporters followed us at a distance of 20 kilometers. As Ao stated, Yagura himself is not there, but the detachment that was there could well smash us to smithereens. That's what sensor means. Of course, at close ranges I feel much better than him, but my detection radius is very small. Well, my bread is Fuin, and it has its own specifics. In general, we have been trying for an hour to break away from the enemies, so far to no avail due to the identical maneuverability of the ships. Of course, there was an idea to try to break away again with the help of Hoshigaki, who saved us at the beginning, but the clan representative himself was among those remaining to cover our retreat. It's a pity, of course, but what can you do? It's war. And since there is war, that means spies, who was now looking at the sea with a sad face. I haven't forgotten how I was almost hit by a piece of technology. And this is not an accident, as one might think based on her behavior. Of course, she played the role of a slightly indecisive but brave girl well, but her actions that were out of character during Yagura's attack made it clear that not everything was so simple. What is the spy's mistake? Probably because she didn't attack after using the technique. No, she, of course, pretended to be fighting, but she just did it without any fuse, clearly trying to preserve chakra. And even a moment with a miss of technology. She's a Jonin. An elite Jonin, who at that moment did not use a technique for a large-scale battle, but a targeted one, that is, designed for a single opponent. And considering that if I hadn't dodged, that cooling ray would have been glowing in my head. Apparently, I was considered too dangerous because of what I sensed through the barrier. And the last, but at the same time the first moment noticed, she was the first to speak after Ao and I denied my spying. So, even if it sounds a little stupid, she tried to shift the blame onto me. Of course, there is a possibility that I was just being paranoid, but I can't believe that so many coincidences can happen at the same time. She's from the clan. Has Yuki completely given herself over to Yagura, or is it just her? If the former, then this is very bad. This is not canon, where you will only meet Yuki. Now there were about 300 owners of Hayatan, including ordinary carriers of the gene who were unable to use chakra. And there are about 70 shinobi among them, which is very decent if you remember the same Haku. I hope it's just her. After just 3 hours, we were finally able to escape pursuit. I don't know what happened at the bloody fogs, but they gradually fell behind, which Ao told us about. As it turned out, we were going to the rebel reserve base, which only Ao and the two most loyal Jounin knew about, among whom Yuki was not. The main forces will also come here after they are able to repel the attack. Since Yagura was fighting with us at that time, the attack should fail, since Mei and the rest could well hold back the onslaught of half of Yagura's troops. They will not have time to mobilize much force, since in this case speed was required. Considering that half of Yagura's shinobi are scattered across the main islands, there is a possibility that the attack will not only end in failure, but will also result in the death of all attackers. We set foot on the shore of a rather large island, which is approximately located in the northern part of the country. The island is rocky and there is little vegetation, but the high peaks can serve as a good means of camouflage. It is clear what the rebels were guided by when choosing this place for their camp. Before we had even taken 10 steps, we were surrounded. About 70 Jonin-level shinobi, not much inferior to our squad. So, these are the rebels, fortunately. Ao approached them and, whispering something, came forward. You all know that there is a mole among us, and maybe more than one. Those in the camp will be checked by Mei-sama. But I cannot be sure that you are not spies either. Here's how. This means that Yuki will be gone soon. I'm wondering how they want to identify the mole. They won't torture everyone, will they? The rebels are unlikely to want to lose the strength of 40 jonin, especially after the massacre in Uzushio. They'll probably use something related to the brain, like the Yamanakas did. Line up, Ao ordered, after which we immediately lined up in a row. Mabui and I did not escape this fate, although we stood at the end. I looked carefully at the line. Yuki is ranked 21st. And the first and second are, those same faithful jonins. The third, fourth and fifth are also people close to Ao. So, if I understood correctly, now there will be just a scene that should reveal the spy. I learned about Ao's connection with the last three through the feeling of darkness when they entered Ao's cabin at night. Of course, only for half a minute, but now the mosaic began to take shape. One guy in a mask came out from the jonin surrounding us, and then put his palm to the first one's head. A surge of chakra and the jounin falls, foaming at the mouth. No, the inspector announced in a neutral tone. Yes, the sight is indeed not the most pleasant. No, he announced when the second one fell too. The third was no longer needed, since a paralyzing seal had already been pressed to Yuki's back, and then a suppressive seal was added. She shouldn't have tensed up so much. So that's who the rat is, wheezed the first jounin, who had just risen from his seat and was lying on the ground a second ago. They took a big risk, because if they were wrong, they would lose the opportunity to identify the spy. But any profession is not without risks, and even more so in the profession of murderers. One of the jonin was instantly next to Yuki, forcefully opening her mouth and pulling out something shiny. A small capsule with something translucent. Well, definitely not water. But there was no doubt left. It was clear that Yuki wanted to say something and, judging by the face twisted in anger, it was not the most pleasant thing, so she was quickly shut up, promptly tied up and taken away. We were taken deep into the island, where the rebel camp was located. The camp was built in a hurry, and it was clear that it was not yet ready for full use, so now many were hastily setting up tents. I was surprised that the attack happened so quickly, but judging by the huge number of wounded who did not have enough space in the hastily created hospital, it was not only Yagura's supporters who suffered. There were about 200 wounded, most of them with medium and light wounds. About 70 people died, as I learned later. Therefore, now everyone who was healthy was setting up a camp, not excluding the possibility of an attack with all the forces under the control of Yagura. Tatsuya, Ao turned to me when Mabui and I were already settled in the new house. A small tent, reinforced with fuin, is quite comfortable. Yes? Mei-sama wants you to come see her. Minus something important? A stupid question for a mercenary. Okay, I'll be right there. Quickly sealing my things and nodding to Mabui, who was eating onigiri at that time, I followed Ao. This means that they decided to cut a command center right into the rock. We reached a quite decently furnished cave, which was held in place by the seals of the fortification. A simple but reliable seal that allows you to seal a structure using chakra. Of course, the fact that it is simple does not reduce its high price, since this seal can only be filled with an entire reserve of chunin. Mei met me surrounded by two jounins who were reading something on a huge scroll. Looking at me, the girl smiled, after which she waved her hand, beckoning me closer. Tatsuya, I've heard a lot about your help in completing the task, she said as I sat down. We sat at a traditional Japanese table, so there was no need for chairs. What are you talking about? Mei-san, I was just fulfilling my part of the agreement. What you did saved my people from certain death. They didn't know about the ambush and they could easily have been killed if they were caught by surprise, the red-haired girl said seriously. Well, if there is a chance, why not help your allies? I grinned, and then changed the topic. So why did you call me, Mei-san? I doubt you just wanted to say thank you. I have a proposal for you. I'm listening to you. We are going to get information from the mole. I suggest you be present during the process. And why do I need this? It's up to you, Tatsuya-kun. Let's just say, this is our return service. I looked at the grin on the face of the future Mizukage, wondering why she started this. Give thanks? Well, of course, I need information, but I doubt that this Yuki knows anything about my relatives. But even if I knew, I can't ask a question about Uzumaki. I somehow don't want to raise doubts among my allies by being interested in the red-haired Fuin masters. I am still too weak to reveal my affiliation. I agree, Mei-san. Looking at the girl's face twisted in agony, I began to doubt my sanity. Why did I come here? The fact is that in this way the rebels showed me their trust by allowing me to observe the interrogation. Of course, I will still be forced to work out this trust, but I still need the information. Especially considering the new ideas about Yagura. Who is there besides you? The tall man with gray hair asked once again. The torture has been going on for half an hour, but the spy still does not speak. Having received no answer, the man just shrugs his shoulders, after which he slowly begins to cut the skin with a dull knife. A minute later, the Jounen's hand glowed green, and he healed the cut area. This is how he cuts her from the beginning of the torture. Who is there besides you? Yuki just grinned. By the way, the Yuki clan did not betray the rebels, only she did. Some personal scores against one of the commanders and his clan as a whole. Minus Mei-san? The torturer suddenly turned around. The redhead just nodded. The man turned back to Yuki, after which he filled his hand with chakra. The man is a good ironine, as can be seen from his healing speed. The next second, the girl screamed, squirming on the torture table. It looks like something to do with nerves. Who is there besides you? Go. She didn't have time to complete what she said, as Ironine sent another impulse. The screeching continued for about 20 seconds, after which Yuki closed her eyes with a loud sob. I'll tell you everything. Well, I didn't understand. Why did they cut it for half an hour then? I looked carefully at the girl, naked to the waist, whose entire body was covered with traces of cuts. This means that some conditions were required for the technology to operate. Who is there besides you? There are 3 of them. The girl was about to betray her supporters when one of Mei's subordinates ran into the room. Mei-sama. We're under attack. He exclaimed. Minus activate the barrier. Which side? The future Mizukage reacted. Minus west and south. AO, approximate number of opponents? The red-haired girl looked at the guy. Everyone in the room, with the exception of Yuki, jumped up from their seats, immediately heading to the places known to them. AO closed his eyes and concentrated, scanning the area. There are 1,700 shinobi, 800 genin, 600 chunin and 300 jounin. Most are from the south. Minus warn the clan heads. Ordinary citizens on the ships, let them sail away. This time we will fight. Yes. The shinobi around responded in unison. Within 30 seconds we got out of the room, after which we headed to the coast. The first squads of shinobi were already clashing there, and at sea about 100 ships belonging to Yagura's troops were visible. And here he is. Yagura burst into the ranks of the rebels, sweeping away everyone in his path. The strange staff in his hand fluttered, each swing wounding or killing one of ours. Ours also did not remain in debt. Clan members, after all. What am I worth? It's time to try out your new skill. Minus partial transformation. With a crunch, my body began to change. The bones became longer, the nails gradually turned into claws, and the overgrown pair of fangs no longer fit in the mouth, making me look like a vampire. My height increased rapidly, along with a feeling of rapidly growing strength. An almost indistinguishable weight appeared on my hands, thorns. The partial transformation skill has been activated. Selected, Hydralisk. Bonuses, plus 10% to agility, plus 10% to speed, plus 20% to strength, bone spikes skill. Noticing out of the corner of my eye how Mabui and Ako also broke into battle, I rushed towards the coast. Let the swing begin. Raising my hands, I send out spikes that instantly kill one Chunin who is not ready for this, and then, swinging the scythe that appears in my hand, I cut off the head of another enemy shinobi. Suetun, liquid blade, a voice said. Intuition roared, forcing me to bend at an incredible angle. A shimmering arc-shaped clod of water flew overhead at amazing speed. Unbending, I send the restored spikes on my arms towards the attacker. Another -1. Minus Suetun, Great Flood. One of Yagura's supporters shouted, and a 2-meter wave rushed towards us from the sea. Futon, Steam Stream, May sealed, exhaling a huge cloud of steam. Faced with a wave, he stopped the equipment, however, covering the shore with a layer of steam. Even if only for a short time, the battle became more difficult, as it became difficult to distinguish between one's own and one's opponent's. Kato, Fire Blade, I said the name of the technique, enveloping the scythe in flames. You can imbue a blade with elemental chakra without a technique, but the trick of this jutsu is different. It allows me to send out compressed waves of fire with a wave. I'm already swinging for a strike, when suddenly a long staff with a hook at the end is whistling at me. Kato, Dragon's Breath, quickly forming the seals, I exhaled a wave of fire 5 meters wide, which dispersed the fog, revealing a view of Yagura, who was already rushing towards me with his staff at the ready. Dodging the wave, he spat out a stream of water in response while swinging his staff. Kato, Fireball, I fought off the water, but the steam on the battlefield became even thicker. At the last moment I managed to raise my scythe above my head, blocking Yagura's blow. A moment, and he's already coming in from the left, forcing me to retreat. I send ready-made spikes from my hands at him, after which I break the distance. It's time for something powerful. Minus Kato, Great Fire Dragon. Having completed the combination of seals and performed the tiger seal at the end, I exhaled a 10-meter dragon. Some of the rebels and Yagura's supporters turned around, seeing a technique that was quite rare for these parts. Meanwhile, the fire dragon almost overtook the Jinchuriki Sanbai, but at the last moment he managed to spin his staff in front of him, creating a flickering mirror of water. Suddenly my dragon changed direction, flying in a completely different direction. An interesting technique. Yagura was about to get involved in close combat again when a stream of lava hit him in the side. Where are you going, Yagura-kun? Mei grinned, wiping her lips with her finger. Yagura jumped back, after which he began to rapidly regenerate. A roar escaped his lips, and the next second a red blanket flared up around him, and 3 tails appeared from his back. Baring his teeth, he instantly found himself next to the red-haired woman, striking her. But Mei turned out to be smart and calmly dodged the Jinchuriki's fist. Instantly forming her seals, she exhaled a cloud of steam at Yagura. I remember she used similar garbage to damage Sasuke's Susanoo. Yagura jumped to the side again, but this time he did not move closer, instead opening his mouth. A light flashed in the mouth of the beast, into which the Mizukage had already transformed, and a beam of chakra rushed towards Mei. She dodged, but Yagura managed to close the distance and strike. The girl slammed into a cobblestone, but did not stop there, breaking through it with her back. Such a bad blow. Having blocked the blow of one of the enemies, I strike with a scythe, interrupting his life. After which I send spikes towards the crowd of shinobi who were throwing all sorts of ninjutsu at ours. This is not the first time during a fight that my intuition flashes, telling me that I'm screwed. This is what happened the next second, when Yagura, being behind me, took my head off with a blow of his clawed hand. The vision quickly passes, and I evade, or rather, try to evade. The blow still reaches me, but does not leave serious wounds. From the influence of the hot chakra of the bijou, the skin turned red, spreading pain throughout the body. Out of the corner of my eye I notice Yagura appearing nearby, after which I automatically raise my scythe, trying to block the blow. The force of the Jinchuriki dragged me a couple of meters, but Mei, who had already recovered, came to my aid and prevented me from falling. Yagura was already right there. With a swing of my scythe I send waves of fire, trying to hit him with an area attack. Mei does the same, but our attempts did nothing to the nimble Jinchuriki. "Zero," I say quietly, pointing my finger at the Jinchuriki who dodged the lava. Yagura clearly realized that this was going to be something unpleasant and tried to retreat. And here. You. The red beam instantly shortened the distance, piercing Yagura's side, although I was originally aiming for the chest. Yes, it was not in vain that I taught this skill, even if only a little. The speed is amazing, the penetration ability is also at the level. The response to my attack was the cry of Yagura, who was not slow to regenerate, trying to break the distance. Mei ran into the rapidly regenerating guy, her hands enveloped in steam. Dodging the girl's attack, Yagura tried to counterattack, but I threw spikes at him, not giving him the opportunity to retaliate. Mei exhaled steam, which quickly overtook the current Mizukage. A scream was heard from under the curtain of steam, and the next moment a smoking Jinchuriki jumped out. Both of us pressing on the guy, Mei and I swapped places, and now I played the role of a kind of tank, covering the girl while she threw a bunch of techniques at Yagura. The entire battle took place in silence, to the sounds of clinking metal and screams of fighting rebels and supporters of the bloody fog. Of course, it was difficult to even keep up with Yagura in terms of physical characteristics, but I seemed to be able to cope. Not without the help of Mei, who significantly weakened the Jinchuriki with techniques. Yagura could not transform into his full bijou form, since there was little space on the shore, which would have slowed him down significantly. Yagura barely dodged a clot of magma that almost hit him in the head. Some wounds did not have time to regenerate, and the rapid attacks of this black-haired guy made it difficult to retreat. Next to a large opponent, Yagura looked like a small teenager, but he successfully repelled most of the pair's attacks. There was no need to rush, Yagura thought, using the water mirror technique to beat off Mei's next technique. Earlier, having decided that it was worth striking while the iron was hot, he rushed after the rebels without waiting for the remnants of his army. Moreover, even he did not have time to come yet. "Zero," the black-haired man's quiet voice was heard again, after which Yagura's intuition howled. He turned his head sharply, letting in a strange dark red beam that was supposed to hit his forehead. But, thanks to his reaction, he was able to dodge, and the beam left only a small cut on his cheek. It was only the next attack that forced him to abandon all thoughts, furiously fighting off the attacks of the tall guy's scythe. Preoccupied with the fight, he was unable to completely evade the redhead's technique, and Yagura barely held back a cry of pain as lava hit his left arm. Already realizing that he would not defeat these two without using the bijou mode, he had already begun to transform when the Jinchuriki sensed him. Finally got it. Yagura sighed with relief when he saw a tall man with blue-black hair rushing towards them across the sea. Dressed in gray robes, he didn't look anything remarkable, but Tatsuya, who was fighting against Yagura, looked at him in shock. Jinchuriki. Tatsuya panicked when he saw the man baring his teeth and felt his aura. Such an open ending ends with such an ending. Thank you for being with me until the end. End of story.